Hello and welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show on a beautiful Sunday afternoon here in the final day of February. My name is Brandon, and you know I appreciate you watching me, checking me out here on a Sunday. You probably could be doing anything, but you're watching me, and I am thankful for that. We've got a few things to cover here today, but first out, shout out to the sponsor, F Custom Jerseys. They customize jerseys for you in any way that you want them done. They're not necessarily your NFL jerseys exact replicas, but they get you the chance to do anything you wanted on the jersey. They sponsor the show. They are in the link in the description. And if you're looking to get a customized jersey, maybe a Little League team, please do look their way. You'll be helping out the show. Tell them I sent you over. So we've got a little bit of a variety of topics I figured we'd talk about today. I don't have a lot of things off the top of my head. Of course, as you guys have seen in the title, I do want to get into Rashad Penny here really quickly in a second. I'm going to touch on just immediate out the point, the latest that we've had on the Russell Wilson watch. I do not intend to spend this whole show going over him as we did kind of last week, as I think we had to last week. There was a lot of news out there regarding him, and it really had been a bit of news that had turned in a way in this ongoing saga that had changed off of what we had seen prior, which was little spouts of smoke, and then suddenly now we see flames coming up out of the windows. So it did need to be covered in that. I'm thinking today we'll try to maybe move a little bit more off of it. I think that this situation has been talked to death. I think even the most ignorant of fan out there is very well versed in what the particulars are in this situation. The way the latest news has twisted and turned is that we get now Russell Wilson's camp, again, firing their salvos by releasing out that Carroll doesn't answer to anyone in the organization, that he's got his sons on the staff. It looks again, just another thing where it's like, okay. And again, I don't think it's a shocker for any of us. We knew that Coach Carroll's sons were on the staff. I don't think many of us liked it because a lot of some of what we might point to as far as the problems within Carroll as he's gone on through his tenure here has been a little bit of falling in love with the nepotism side of things. You move on from a Rashaad, but then you go and hire a guy like Norton who wasn't good enough to get the job in the first place when it was between him and Rashaad. Nor was Norton good enough to get it when you were looking at defensive coordinators twice prior, being Dan Quinn and Gus Bradley. The Suns are literal nepotism. I mean that in more of a metaphorical sense, but of course it's quite literal with the Suns. And then we get the heels of the news today that Carl Smith, a longtime assistant coach, is coming back, which I don't know how to read that. There's some in Seahawks land that tell me that that's a bad thing, that he was part of a lack of reason for why Wilson might have had any whatever. But the part that I see as far as a little sub point of Carl Smith coming on is his son Tracy. His son Tracy is also coming aboard. And so this is one of those things that gets stuck in my craw a little bit is, man, the family thing and hiring your family and to coach a football team. And we see in Dallas, for instance, Jerry Jones and his son running things and how well that goes. There's too many times you might have a story of a Shanahan, but for every Shanahan, there's a Schottenheimer. There's 10 Schottenheimers. I'm not a fan of that part of this story that we're hearing leaked out. I'm not a fan of the fact that Russell's leaking it back out from his direction of things. I'm not a fan of the New Orleans mayor going out and proclaiming that Russell should come on down to New Orleans. Hey, Drew Brees isn't fully retired yet, lady. Your most treasured athlete in your small history of having any treasured athletes to treasure. And he's out there running freaking drills out in his front porch looking like he's still ready to play, and you're out there courting Russell Wilson. Not a really great look there, Mayor lady. Why don't you just back off, okay? Back off, Mayor. Wait, don't you have a job to do? Why are you making videos trying to get Russell Wilson? Go do your job. Sorry, I went on a tangent there. But all the same, I think my last little thought on this is we'll move on to the other stuff. Penny talk I want to actually get into real quick here is, look, the situation you look at, there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions, and there's people that are on all sides of this as far as telling you what the room temperature is. It seems everybody's taking a lick of their finger and sticking it up, and nobody can tell where the breeze is blowing from. I'm not necessarily sure that I know it any better than anybody else. But the one thing I think we can all agree on in this situation is that we are not seeing any sort of de-escalation. We need to, at one point or another here, see this thing start to just ease off a little bit. Need both parties to take their foots off the gas. Instead, we're seeing them both pushing right down hard, and we've got a game of chicken coming on with the two head-on collisions, and it's like, who's going to turn off first? Who's going to swerve first? And which side is right, which side is wrong is really irrelevant to this current point, being that if we all, to a degree, I think in one side or another, feel that the best opportunity for our Seahawks moving into the future is having at the moment Coach Carroll and Russell Wilson together and going forward. Coach Carroll's not going anywhere. Those people that want him fired, I'm going to see it 20 times in the chat today. I get it. It's not happening no matter how many times you try to speak it into being. It's just not going to happen. So the best point forward is these two coming together, but we need to see these fires calm. We need to see a little bit less smoke. And instead we're seeing more of a ramping up, which is getting me concerned about this timeline speeding up for a potential departure of Russell Wilson. How many more shots does he get to fire into the press before it's one too many for Coach Carroll? For a man who has, as Russell Wilson's camp is illustrated to us, basically omnipotent type power within the organization right now. I don't know in regards to this, so we'll see how it on goes. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about it, but what I really wanted to open up today with is on Penny. Then we will get into the chat. We'll get over into the Discord channel, get some people on the line here a little earlier today if I can. But the place I wanted to dive into here with Penny was a little bit in getting people excited for players as we go into next season. There's a lot of negativity around this team, a lot of talk of, oh, we're going to be 3-13 or whatever else. I want to start to kind of maybe build up around that lack of confidence in some of the folks out there. Yes, there's things we need to do on this team to resolve some things. There's parts of this team that aren't great, but there are some places here that we could feel a little bit optimistic about their future. And the place I want to start out here today was on Rashad Penny, because I get a lot of comments in the YouTube sections from people that many of them are like me, as I spoke to in the title, tantalized by his potential in this new scheme. And then there's those that are just, I think, a little bit down on him and probably have been down on him since pretty much day one, because he was a draft pick that didn't make a lot of sense. And he's a pick that continues to be one that they look at and they go, this guy's the outlier of any of the running backs in the model you pick and what you look for, that Marshawn Lynch type standard of running back. You're going way out of it with this guy. Why did they make this pick? Why did this happen? First off, the Rashad Penny pick was probably made because of one guy by the name of Todd Gurley. That's really what drove that pick. You had Nick Chubb and Rashad Penny both there on the board at the same time. We all know Nick Chubb is the exact model of what Carroll looks for in a running back. For him to have passed on Chubb, two factors I think came into play. One, we know for certain that they had a much cleaner medical history on Penny coming out than they did on Gurley, who had a torn ACL back in college. But the second part of this is that Carroll had started to get routed by Gurley and the Rams scheme over the last couple of matchups that they had played the Rams over a course of a two-year period with McVay coming in there. And the Rams had just hammered those outside zone runs, time and time again, beaten Coach Carroll's 4-3 defense and its ability to one of the bedrocks of this defense is to set an edge, to force everything back inside. And yet they were getting Gurley out and around, getting in off the edge, and his speed was getting him up the field 40, 50 yards. And Coach Carroll was seeing that this special speed that this guy brought to play, this extra gear that he could tap into, almost made it darn near impossible for his defensive ends to continue to set that edge correctly. Or they would set the edge so far back to have to gain some depth off of it that now Gurley can just cut up inside off of the tackle. So Coach Carroll, I think, became a little bit, and Schneider maybe too, I think this was more of a Coach Carroll thing and a reaction by him, because he does get a little reactionary, let's face it sometimes, especially when it comes to personnel stuff. And I think he saw that and he went, okay, let's try to grab one of those. We've had this one guy who's the guy that's like 3 yards in a cloud of dust and on a big play is going to get you 15 yards. Let's get the guy that maybe isn't as much the 3 yards in a cloud of dust guy that can maybe then get you the 40, 50-yard run. This is the logic that was at play. The problem is of course, in execution. Execution becomes where this comes into play. Because you go out and get a guy like Rashad Penny, but then you still stick within your inside zone run scheme off of like I formation, or if you've got two tight ends out there and you put Russell up under center, you stick in this inside zone, everything between the A gaps. And then if not that, you're usually in shotgun out of read option. And then again, it's going to be a handoff to a running back up the middle. Let's take two of Rashad Penny's best runs in 2019. And again, we'll get to the chat here shortly, guys. So if I get behind, we will get back up. So hang in there. Let's go to 2019 and two of his better runs. You've got the Steeler game early on in the season. Chris Carson and his fumbleitis is like full on, he's infecting other people around him when he's on the football field. It's that bad. So they bring in Penny and finally start to give him a little bit more of a shot in this game. And you get later on in the game, Seattle needs a score. It's a very tight game, back and forth a little bit. Seattle was mostly in control, but there was a little bit of like, it wasn't certain. You've got Russell Wilson in his read option set, gives it to Rashad Penny. Penny makes one little cut, and he's up the field and gone, basically. Kind of cuts back up against the going back strong side, sort of starts up in the middle, and he finds a way to get to the outside of the tackle, which was amazing. Then we get later on in the season, Eagles, first game, not the playoff game, but the first game. Again, read option setup. Again, hands it to Penny. The defensive end is coming down the line of scrimmage, crashing. Penny makes one little shuffle step, discards that guy to the left, hits that gear down on it, up the field 50 yards for a touchdown. He busted both of these two big plays off doing something that's really not in his wheelhouse as a player. He can do read option stuff. He can be a decent back with that. He can run it up the middle okay. But where you need to utilize this guy is on the edges. And then again, to my eyes, last year on the few carries that he did get before he kind of went down with what I'd say is a little bit of an injury that's a thing you get when you get those ACL injuries. There's some other soft tissue things that come along then the next year. It's not unusual. And a lot of times it takes that extra year to get over the ACL tear, to get your full bounce back, your full wheels back. And even this last year, though, my point being is they weren't using him up the middle. They were using him up the middle again. Everything up the middle, up the middle, up the middle. Get this guy to the edges. So let me grab a couple of quick stats here that I went out and located up on Penny. And this was when he was coming out of the draft here that I wanted to show you guys. And again, this is something I'm hoping to maybe get you guys a little bit hyped up. I'm not saying this guy's going to become a superstar, but as I spoke of in my title, I'm tantalized by his potential, tantalized by the big play threat that he could offer to this offense if you build up a nice offensive line and then you bring an offensive coordinator in who can utilize him right. We'll get to that in a second. But you can see here off of when he was initially coming out, these are the Pro Football, or more of the advanced tag, the Pro Football focus grades on him coming out versus some of the other running backs in that season that were coming out and where he lied. This is yards per carry when contacted at or behind the line of scrimmage. So this is a great stat because this stat tells you a lot about what happens with a guy. Can he get out of that first tackle? If a lineman doesn't get a guy blocked, can he break that first tackle and then try to make something happen beyond that? Or is he always reliant upon having those huge holes, those huge lanes to run through, in which case this particular statistic would be a lot lower with him. So you can see Nick Chubb down there in 2.64. Nick Chubb is the guy you would think would be crazy in this stat. This is the guy you would think would have been dragging guys all over the place. That's what he's done in the NFL. But if you look at this, you've got Rashad Penny, 0.75 yard a carry more. And again, the key on this stat is yards per carry when contacted at or behind the line of scrimmage in college. So the guy isn't just a guy who needs open space to get out there and run around. There's ability here to break tackles. There's ability to get over things that isn't blocked right in front of him. As I spoke of a second ago with the Eagles play, and they had the defensive end coming down unblocked, and it's basically his job to break that tackle in that moment. He did so, but then did the second part of the equation, which is then to bust off the big play. So another stat here we'll go to. You had Saquon Barkley coming out in that same draft. And again, this is the yards per carry when contacted at or behind the line of scrimmage. Look at how low Saquon Barkley is. 0.46. 0.46. 57 out of 58 running backs in that particular draft when contacted at or behind the line of scrimmage, while Rashad Penny on the other side of it, 3.32 yards. Number one. Now, level of competition factors in. San Diego State doesn't play against the toughest of the tough, granted. Donnell Pumphrey was there before Rashad Penny, also I think had a 2,000-yard season or something like that prior to him, and he's not been an amazing pro either, so valid there. This is a stat that I pointed to as well from 2009. I've often spoken about this on the stream, but I just thought I would present it here again. Rashad's Penny injury really came at the worst. It felt like the Seahawks were starting to utilize him correctly. And again, this is in 2019. Not last year. He averaged 8.2 yards per carry on outside runs and 7 yards per carry off tackle, an 11.4 yard yak per reception in 2019. That was the third part I'd forget to reference, is that other stat where he was actually very good out of the backfield in 2019 as well. Again, this should get you excited about this guy. I'm not saying he's a star, but if he can get the opportunity to be utilized, here's the key again, correctly, which we're going to get to the last part of this here in a second. What do you got? Here's another one. Rashad Penny has seen 10-plus carries in 5 games in his career. Now, last year we had 10 carries, 30 yards, which isn't good there, but everything else, 12 carries, 108 yards and a touchdown. 10 carries and 62 yards and a touchdown. 14 carries and 129 yards and a touchdown. 15 carries, 74 yards, and I think that's 4 catches and 33 yards and a receiving touchdown as well on that. He had 2 touchdowns in that game. But in those 5 career games where he's had 10 carries or more, he's had 61 total carries, if we take those games, 403 yards, and he's averaging 6.61 yards per carry. That's pretty good. That means you give this guy high volume, he seems to give you pretty good production. This is where, again, you have to, it's to me the measure of taking the stat with what you see on the field. I tried to reference a couple of plays which to my sightline are like, well, wait, not being utilized necessarily correctly. Seems to be misutilized here. Slamming him up the middle, having him run off read option. What about some pitch plays out wide or some wide zone runs? Why don't we implement some more of that with him? Why don't you have that be the predominant run that he's running and every once in a while mix in an inside zone then? That's why you got Carson is for the inside zone runs. Why are we utilizing him for this? Doesn't make a lot of sense. So again, just some good little stats here with it. Again, I want to bring up this last thing with him in regards to this is his 3-year career here. This is the 3-year career where everyone tells me this guy's a complete bust. Oh, this was such an awful pick. There's nothing, no potential here. There's just, oh, goodness. Okay, 5.1 yards per carry average while not being utilized correctly, while not being given the opportunity to be featured in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, I understand the injury situation from the back end of 2019, and then basically this whole season loss sucks. Injuries occur. It happens. We've seen it with Carson. And it seems like those same people that elevate Carson and tell me that he's amazing forgive all of the injuries that he fights through, forgive the fact he misses half a season, and then points over to Rashad Penny and the injury thing being so horrific and horrible. And I don't like any injuries on running backs either. I just don't worry about injuries on running backs when they're on rookie deals. I worry about it after you pay them. It's when you give guys big money that I worry about it. Because when you have them injured and they're on the rookie deal, the cost and loss and price is not as much. So I love a lot of what I see here in Rashad Penny going forward. The last key to this, and then we'll jump into the stat here, is Shane Waldron's existence in this universe and his existence as our offensive coordinator. This guy is going to come in and he is going to utilize the edges like nobody has in the last 10 years here in Seattle. He's going to force them out of just this love affair with the inside zone constantly, with the read option constantly. This is a lot of with Russell Wilson going back up under center a little bit more, running a lot more of the traditional play action looking game. This stuff is all going to mend nicely towards allowing Penny to be able to attack those edges again and utilize them like that. And I would have to feel like Waldron looks at some of these stats that are there for him to view, watches Penny out on the football field, and puts 2 and 2 together as a guy who is supposed to be a pretty smart offensive mind. If he doesn't, then there's some things we can definitely draw away from that on the other side of it. But I'm going to, for the time being, understand and believe that in the fact the Rams understood in their offense how to utilize Todd Gurley best, he can run some inside stuff just like Rashad Penny can run some inside stuff. But Gurley in his prime was at his best getting him on the edges. Teams knew they wanted to get him on the edges, and there was still nothing teams could do about it. You start cheating out wide, then they can attack you inside, and you have one less defender in between the tackles to be able to kind of clog things up. There's a lot more open space, which then bends back into those running backs because the second you get them open space, they're gone. They're gone. He's got a burst. No one else, we have not had here since probably Sean Alexander, the kind of burst that Rashad Penny has. It is a special skill he's got. Can they utilize it right? I don't know. But is the potential there? Yeah. Should Waldron be able to get it done? Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get over into the chat here and see what's going on with my peoples. Jace, how you doing, Jace? Thomas E., wish we could trade Russ for the number 1 pick and get Lawrence, laughing out loud. Yeah, not going to happen, unfortunately. Just no chance. There's a 0.000. There might be a 0 chance at this point. AB7, hey, Brandon, have you heard any more speculation about Russell leaving? There's no more speculation I've heard, just of what I spoke about in the opening comments regarding more news leaks are coming through here. That's a continuing escalation of the situation, not de-escalating. We need both parties to start tampering this down a little bit if we're hoping to get towards resolution. If these things just keep butting heads, these battles don't tend to last long in the NFL when they're this public and this long ongoing suddenly. This is weeks now on end, nearly a daily news story every day touching on this stuff. Washi, how you doing, Washi? John, John was responding to him. How you doing, John? Good to see you, buddy. Devin, hey, glad we're here. Go Hawks. Devin, how you doing? Gino, hello, hello, hello. The Bears said they were addressing the media on Tuesday. Well, the one upshot you can take from this news story today, I would believe. Well, I can't say that. I can't say it for sure. I hope we're not hearing anything on that. So the one thing with this trade and this deal I would have to think on this is that it will be very important if there was something going on here for all parties in the process to be absolutely silent and for it to be a complete shocker. There's no build up to start to make your peace with it. You just wake up in the morning and the headline's staring you right in the eye. The reason being is that it starts to go public and it destroys his value, and it means that Seattle has now let it out the bag that they have to move on from him, rather than at the moment it's like he's a Seahawk here next year. If we can't get a good deal, whatever, this would theoretically drive the highest draft compensation back as long as you can keep things under wrap. Jays had baseball practice, and the day before that I was at my new house helping remodel, and I was running around a lot in the past 2 days, so my thighs are shot. Stretch out, man. Stretch out. Drink a lot of water. Watsy, when are you getting mods in the server? A bunch of people spammed the server. Washi, I've got 2 admins now in there. We will add mods as we can with it. Here's the thing with the Discord server. I've got way too much time I've got to already invest in this channel right now. I can't get into there with this and that, and it's a lot of back and forth instantly. I'm sorry people jumped into the Discord and suddenly got childish. I don't get the trollish behavior at all. I really don't. I'm going to do as much as I can to tamper it down, but it's not my highest priority on this channel. So I've got a good friend who I've made as an administrator. I trust him. I've known him for multiple decades. He does this with other channels and stuff. He's going to go in there and he's reset things back up a bit in there now. So I will be sending out, I put a new link down in the bottom. Things are now kind of removed around in there, and we've got people watching. I'm going to trust him to do this because, frankly, I just don't have the time. I created mainly the Discord channel to get people in on the live stream show. I know Discord is used as this community hub place, but I have a hard enough time in here dealing with the trolls in this thing. I can't deal with trolls at every way which balloons, and everybody starts spamming me to be a mod, and then it just gets tiresome. So I'll continue to try to work on a washi. Look for the new in the description section of my deal below. We've got the Discord channel. I've got a new link down there where that should be. I believe they've cleaned some things up there. I know they were making some modifications in there yesterday. Gotree, it says Russell Wilson the greatest Seahawk player of all time. No. Steve Largent was a better wide receiver. Walter Jones was a better left tackle. Unless you're just putting the positional value of quarterback to be weighted so heavily that you disregard other positions to that great regard. Steve Largent retired with all of the major receiving records, all of them, when he retired. Walter Jones was considered by many to be maybe the best left tackle of all time. I don't know where there's a discussion that exists right now at the moment. There's a lot of time for him to maybe get it done, but I don't know where there's a discussion by anyone of Russell Wilson competing as an all-timer right now. But I agree with Thomas. He is the best Seahawks quarterback by far, by a country mile ahead of Hasselbeck and Craig. Joey Del Rosario says, I thought the Seahawks re-signed Josh Gordon. He signed with the FCF Zappers. Him signing with the FCS Zappers doesn't preclude him from signing with Seattle. The guy hasn't played a lot of football in 3 years. So look at it like a minor league getting his feet back under him and playing some to prep himself up for the season so he doesn't have to start from square one. He could play out the season. The season will be over before training camp, I believe. And then he can jump back into the mix with Seattle. Fish, if we trade Russ, I want to trade him to the Raiders. I like Carr. He's been playing really good while getting sacked 70 times. If we turn into 40 sacks, get him some weapons, he could be dangerous. He could be dangerous. I do maintain the Raiders would be the most interesting ball club, I think, to trade for at the end of the day. And Carr is an interesting guy for Coach Carroll. I mean, Coach Carroll wants a quarterback who's going to play within himself, who's going to protect the football, but still yet capable of making a big throw from time to time. Derek Carr is that quarterback. He is that guy. He had 9 interceptions last year, something like that. I mean, he's going to take care of the football. So he would fit into at least what Coach Carroll likes to look for in that. But We'll see, man. We'll see. I still maintain hard to figure out how the trade exactly goes down this year. But again, if they're the amount of pressure that's being pushed on this now from all sides and what's coming in here is can make it lead to this really quickly. What's up, D-Boy? I'd love to get you in on the live stream today on the Discord channel there, D-Boy. So if we can, I'm going to send you, I'll send you a link again here during the show to your Twitter, and we'll see if we can maybe get you in if you're down. Seahawks Briseño. People think that Seattle is really going to trade Russ. You know we would lose $39 million in the deal. This is a part, Seahawks Briseño, that I think folks get just a little bit too much hung up on, man. I really do think folks are getting hung up on this too much. The key on this, the key question is not the $39 million of dead money. That's not the key. The key is, does Russell Wilson want out of town? Is Russell Wilson, rather, he might be making it look subtle / starting to get a little bit more of a firm push to the public as far as what we hear from media, but what if behind closed doors he's saying, go get this done? And what we're seeing in public is him pushing the pressure on the front end. But on the back end, it's live and it's coming at him hot. And they're saying, you figure out a way to get it done. And within this is a couple of, two different things within this, Seahawks Briseño. There's two things within this. Number one, if Russell Wilson really wants out of town as bad as I just spoke about, he wouldn't give up money, Seahawks Briseño. He wouldn't give back some of that bonus money to then go to a new team who would then pay him on a new deal. That is that's the part where there's a lot of folks like, and I get where you guys are coming from. $39 million is a lot. Nobody takes a $39 million dead hit. This doesn't happen. But we're in the off season of the new. $22 million for Goff, $33 million for Wentz. Teams are starting to move on from quarterbacks a little quicker. So the rule of thumb being that they just won't take a dead money hit. There's just no way. Yeah, you take the dead money hit this year, but here's the other thing. That means you take all the dead money hit off of his contract into this season, and you're essentially cleared off the books by next year. You have all that money back in tow to then spend after this season. So, yeah, it would hurt them this year, but we've got to be also realistic here within this Seahawks Briseño. They're trading Russ. I think the team's going to be pretty, aside from bringing Carr back or going for a Darnold guy or some other quarterback out there on the market, if they're going for a rookie quarterback in the draft at that point, they're probably making their bed with the fact that they're not going to be competing next year or competing for Super Bowls at least. And if that's the case, if you've got to take $39 million in dead money hit next year because of that, is that so crazy a thought for them to do if they think that way, if they believe that? And then the last outlier on this is the last other way that this could happen and go down, Seahawks Briseño, is the King's ransom theory behind this. Oakland comes in and says, here's 5 first-round picks. Here's 2 extra first-round picks because of the $39 million dead money you have to hit. If a team came in and was willing to do that, understanding the factors at playing being that they're going to get a cheap Russell Wilson for the next couple of years and no on the hook for no bonus money, and that Seattle's had to eat that then wouldn't merit Seattle to then get a couple of extra picks at that point. So these are all methods in which it could happen. Is it likely to? In that respect, no, it's not likely to. But there's a couple of paths to this happening. If the key at the beginning of this, the 3 trails that are in front of the Seahawks front office is, does he really want out? Or is this, again, him really just pushing truly for change, and he really does want to stay long-term, which it could also be that as well. Maxwell, how you doing? Spud Homer, hello. What's up, Spud? He says, what's up, dude? How do you feel about the quarterback from Notre Dame? Middle round guy. I watched a little bit of him. Yeah, he's all right. There's nothing that's the wow factor on him. And middle round guys, it's hard to get excited with them. Or think that you're going to get much out of them past them being a backup. That's all I kind of see in him. So, Scouts Bill, can't comment on any Discord channel. What is going on? I don't know. I might have to make some adjustments there. Again, Scouts Bill, what I'm trying to do with this, we're changing the Discord channel up here. It's in the middle of adjusting. Please understand, guys, I didn't create the Discord channel as necessarily the community thing. It's kind of looks like it's going to become that. The problem I have with that, though, is that it becomes trolled out, Scouts Bill. So I open this channel up, and I get like 30 trolls coming through, and then 30 other people coming through hounding me to make them a mod, and then 30 other people coming through to hound me to tell me why I should have made the first 30 people a mod. So it just gets kind of tiresome for me, and I just kind of go, I don't care. I'm utilizing it for my means on this channel. You know what I mean? John, James, have you looked at Kellen Mond? I did. That was one quarterback I took a little bit of a closer look at last night. Big kid, big arm, little mechanical in the pocket at times. I really like his ball placement, James Glenn. For a guy with a really big arm, he is able to put the ball on various throws in the right places. I love how he throws with anticipation. It's impressive to watch that on him. Sometimes the accuracy can come and go a bit. And with him, I do wonder a little bit as far as his mobility goes. Does he have enough mobility moving into this new age now where everybody needs to seemingly have plus mobility? He's not really that guy. And being that he's not, he's a very good passer. I don't know if I go amazing passer. There's a lot of potential here with him though still. There is upside here. And again, on some of those throws he makes, like the throwing with anticipation, he'll make a throw where he has a guy running an out route and he knows he needs to put the ball out and away towards the sideline on it, and it's a tough throw anyway because he's throwing it back across the field, but he will find a way to put that ball back across the field and tuck it back and away. And I saw on a couple of throws he did it where the defenders had picked up within the scheme that what was going to happen, what route essentially the receiver was going to run, and they were jumping the route. So he's got some things that are very interesting to him. He does have some of the similar sloppy footwork stuff that I think the kid out of Alabama's got, which can be cleaned up. It's fixable. But boy, sometimes you'd like to see a little bit more of these guys just, step up into the throw, get up on the front foot and let it rip, whereas the falling back stuff gets a bit annoying at times. But he is a prospect, James. I mean, he's a guy this is a guy with potential. He does have potential. I don't know that you've got a firm stroke on him being, I know he's going to be a starter in this league. Absolutely. You can't say that. Maxwell Stern says, do I think Penny could be a top 10 running back in the league with the new scheme? I think he could crack the top 10. I don't think he's ever going to be a top 5, top 7, top 8 running back in this league, but he could crop, top 10, sure. C's Velasquez says, hell no. Spud Homer, what do you think of the vet minimum for Des Bryant? I think you've got to be very imaginative in how you round out these receiver ranks this offseason, because if you are going to hold on to Lockett and keep that $11.5 million on the books, you don't have a lot of money to spend on other receivers. So I might look at it. He didn't seem like he had a whole hell of a lot left with the Ravens, but the Ravens' passing attack has been pretty tepid for the last couple of years, so maybe it's not necessarily a black mark on him with it, but he is a lot older now as a player. He hasn't played a lot of football over the last couple of years, but I'd take a look at him. Vet minimum, non-guaranteed deal, I'd take a look at. Maxwell says, I heard a rumor today that Russell Wilson would be happy to accept a trade to the Bears. I don't get why he would want to go to Chicago. Maybe the pizza? Maybe. I mean, all four of the teams to me were pretty head scratching as far as who he picked and was looking at. Outside of Las Vegas made sense to me, but I think I keep calling them Oakland, by the way. But everybody else, it was kind of like, what? Huh? This one, likewise, I wouldn't understand much either. I really wouldn't want to understand it much as well. Maybe he likes the offensive coordinator there. Maybe he's seen that Michael Jordan operated in that city and was able to raise his star to a level no one has been able to see in Chicago. And then he sees a pathway for doing that himself if he's able to bring a couple of championships to Chicago. I didn't have a lot of answer for why he chose those teams in the first place, and I don't really have a lot of an answer for why. I mean, he's going to go there, and that team doesn't seem to be all that close. It doesn't appear as though they're going to be able to sign Allen Robinson. Maybe he knows something that we don't, that he'd be able to bring back Allen with him at that point, and he's got his receiver, and they can – I don't know. I don't know. It was an odd selection, Maxwell. I don't think we can take from it that – I don't know what we can take from it with it. These are all rumors and leaks and unconfirmed sources, so we just have to kind of – we're all making kind of guesses. I don't think there's a lot of certainty out there. A.K. Ollie, how you doing, A.K. Ollie? Good to see you in here. John Robinson was talking about something. Scouts Bill fixed Discord. Yeah, it's awesome hearing that over and over. John Robinson, hey Brandon, what do you think of Wake Forest quarterback Jamie Newman? I have not looked at him. Frankly, John, I've got to get into some of the quarterbacks a little bit more. I'm rounding through my defensive ends right now. So there's a lot of guys to look at in this draft. So it's a lot of, I'm trying to put at least a couple hours a day into looking at these guys. So I have not had to take a look at him, but he's on my list. I'm going to be looking at him. We got to look a lot closer at these quarterbacks now in this draft, don't we? Me especially. So I do intend to do that. Yui, wide zone is a perfect scheme for Penny if healthy. Can't trust he will be, and just don't want him as our number one back. Much prefer Penny as number 2, Jamal Williams, or North Carolina Javonte Williams, or OSU Trey Sermon. Yeah, I'm not looking to have the guy be a 20 carry a game bell cow back. And I think the NFL is moving away more and more from needing to have a back that has 20 carries a game. They're going to be fewer and far between, in my opinion, with that. I look at him as a guy I've kept my stats up there, Jesus. I look at him as a guy that I want to, more than anything else, at least get him into that 10 carry place. See what he can do with 10 carries a game. Get him 10 touches. So he's really, that's why, again, I'm hesitant to put him into this top. Is he a top 5 back? Is he a top 10 back? How about it? He's a super explosive back that can average 5 yards a carry for you. You could give him, 10 carries a game gets you up at about 160 carries for the year. He's going to put 700 to 900 yards up on the board at that point, get you 8 or 9 touchdowns. Is that a star at that point? I don't know it's a star. But it's amazing production from the running back position. It's efficient, explosive production from the running back position. And I think that's where, again, I would move towards with UE people to get to. I love Javonte Williams. I like Williams of Green Bay. I love Javonte Williams and Trey Sermon. I'm sort of meh on Trey Sermon. And admittedly, I'm going to watch a little bit more of Trey's film before I get my final my final deal with it. Washi says, my parents made me delete Discord, so I left your server, and I'm trying to join again, and the link isn't working. Try in the description section of my Washi. I just put I put a new link down. All right, guys. Here, I'll put it in the deal. I never knew Discord was such a huge thing until I created this thing. I got to be honest with you guys. Okay. Yeah. So I'll put the invite back down here on the deal, you guys. Please, everybody, be civil in there. Like when I put this in here, part of the reason we had to build this is everybody was not being civil in the Discord. Brandon, it's funny to me that Russ picks 4 teams that all have bigger flaws than Seattle. Laughing out loud, Chicago, worse offensive line. New Orleans, $39 million over the cap. Raiders, bad defense. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Again, I know I just said a second ago. I struggle to find another word for this here. And again, bear with me, guys. I'm putting this in there. So check out I'll put this down in you guys on the chat. You'll see this here. Here's the new link to the Discord on it. Again, be nice with each other. Be good to each other. Okay? Be good. Be good. Okay. So it should be in there on the chat now. I don't get it either, Patriot Sports Cards. I don't know what he's thinking. I'm not exactly sure on what the point is to go with those teams. There would be other teams I would have thought he would have looked towards. I mean, Miami's on the upswing. They got a lot of young talent, a lot of draft picks they could swing, money to spend. The Jets the same way. Look at the Jets. I mean, you got Fant over at right tackle. He's a pretty good right tackle. You got left Micah Becton, had a great first year. They could be beefing up that offensive line. He's got Denzel Mims over there. They could put everything around him at that point. Odd on those teams, man. I don't know. No worries, Randall. You got in here. I appreciate you, buddy. How you doing? John Robinson says, Brandon, I think the signing of Tater Smith is an olive branch back to Wilson. Could be. Somebody was posting up on Twitter today that he was one of the reasons Wilson didn't mature more, or raise his game level up more or something. I don't know anything about it really with the guy, so I'm not sure with him on how to read that one way or another, John. Why, dude, why? This is what I've been saying. Penny can be a star in this new system. 5.3 yards per carry average, 5.3 career yak. Yeah, I do think he is. He was the guy, why, dude, why, when Waldron first got hired, the first guy that came to my mind who I was like, who should be excited about this was, I thought, Penny. This is going to give him the 180 degrees difference in offensive coordinator in the way that he's going to feature him, and it's going to go to his skill set. It's going to fit him like hand to glove. Doesn't mean he's a star, I don't know, but it is. It's going to be a nice. I think it'll be a good blend for him, and I think a lot of people are going to be eating some crow that have thought this guy was just going to be a complete bust. Again, not a star, but you as a running back average 5+ yards a carry. I give you 10 touches a game. You stay in that realm. You're able to score some touchdowns, bust off some big plays. I'll go find a bruising back in between that. I'll find a Fournette to offset your outside stuff at that point. No problem. And you get a combo between two guys, then Fournette gets 8 to 10 carries a game, or a Carson-like runner gets the other, 7 to 10 carries a game, you between your two running backs, you come out the end of the year at 1,500 yards. That gets the job done. Jay, what's up, Nathaniel? How you doing? John, Russ is better under center. What tape are you watching? They almost completely took that out of the playbook because in 1 year, Russ struggled under center and was too short for a 3-step drop. Yeah, I would buy that. I think that more of the deep drop stuff, I would not say that him under center with 3-step drops, if they were committed to more of what the Rams were doing, where it's more of sub rollout stuff, John, I think it's a little bit more helpful for Russ in that respect. You get him out a little bit deeper. Now you can get a little bit deeper in the pocket to see down the football field. Now you can get him off on an edge where he's able to get away from let's say a tough defensive end one way or another that's providing some constant pass rush. I would be interested in seeing that. I remember to my eyes early on, he did have some success at times back in the day going under center. I don't know if he was killer in it or whatever, but he's going to have to get used to it again, John, because it is what he's going to do in this scheme. Jay's going to be gone for an hour. Dad just called. Have an hour. Sounds good, Jace. We'll see you in an hour. Hey, Brian, how you doing? Hello. Wait, why, dude? Why? Wait, greatest Seahawk ever for me. Randall, is there a scenario where you can see Russ back with the Hawks in 2021 and we have a successful year? To use your marriage analogy, and too much has been said or maybe not said, Pete's silence is deafening. Pete's silence is very deafening. A guy that's not a guy that's ever been shy to talk has suddenly gone mute on us. Yeah, that I still maintain this is fixable, Randall, and that at the end of the day, what both of these people, these two men who probably both have a pretty healthy sized ego on both sides of it, have to look at in this situation is what is really going to be best for both of our legacies as we look forward on this. If you, Russell, move on, are you going to get your best success going to another team? Historically speaking, it hasn't proven to be that way. Everybody can point to a Tom Brady and say, well, Brady did it in this, and that means it's true every turn. If a great Hall of Fame quarterback moved on, he'd just go on and have it, Joe Montana moved on, he went to the Chiefs. How'd that end out for him? Brett Favre moved on to a couple teams after Green Bay. How'd that move on from him? How'd that deal with him? I think that there's a success story here and there, but there's a lot of failures out of it. And I think likewise from Coach Carroll's standpoint, losing a Hall of Fame quarterback and thinking that you're going to, as a coach, bring in another guy and attain ultimate success again. Historically, I don't think it's been real likely that it showed itself to be that way. It hasn't shown itself to be that way. So the thing they could, being that I do go back to both of them, I believe being pretty smart men, that at the end of the day, you would come back to that. Our legacy is best sealed with us together. Our best chance for success is really sealed with us two together. I don't know that they've gotten that way, though, Randall, because as you said, the silence has been deafening. And as I spoke about, there's been no de-escalating in this situation from either camp. There really hasn't. There's been a lot of sort of mudslinging here. Cameron, what's the latest on the Russell Wilson news? Just his camp released out that Coach Carroll basically has omnipotent power in the organization and answers to no one. And that his sons seem to carry throughout a little bit of the nepotism thing with his sons and them having the only ones who have Coach Carroll's ear and can tell him anything. Not good. Goatriot says, Bobby Wagner, Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman, Marshawn Lynch better than Wilson? Is any of them better than Wilson in your opinion? No, probably not. Because I think that I don't go Trits. I don't think they're better than Wilson in that respect. He'll be a better player as far as that goes. Bobby Wagner's been a great middle linebacker, go to the Hall of Fame, an all-time great. Is he going to be measured above some of the other names on that list? I don't know. And it gets hard, go treats, when you get into this place where you start parsing between Hall of Famers. These are really close together factors there with that. Huey, when Russ is under center, the offense is more deception and play action is more effective. No one is buying his read option fakes in the shotgun. Russ's bootleg game under center is great and improves vision. Yeah, I think this is the one thing I would agree with you on. Not one thing, but the thing I agree with you on is that I think that the fact that Russ doesn't hold the read options as much limits its effectiveness. I think the read option is effective as long as the defense has to truly account for the quarterback, i.e. that defensive end has to sit down and wait, and he's got to maintain his fundamentals and not bite in on the run because he's got to watch for that quarterback running around his side. And I don't know that the teams have felt like they've had to do that as much, where the DN probably feels like he can go after the run and is still quick enough to get back out to Russ, with Russ not necessarily being as quick as he once was. Seahawks fan base, I'm not too far behind. Why do wide? I think you're right, James. Evergreen is easier to give Russ what he wants or build another legendary defense with a Marshawn Lynch running attack. Yes, Evergreen. I think it's easier to do the latter, Evergreen. I think you can give some of what Russ wants. I don't think you can get him whole hog. So I think you've got to. If it's got to be all or nothing in that situation from Russ's standpoint, where if you guys don't deliver on A through Z and every letter of that alphabet, I want out. Well, no, I don't think you can do it that way. But if it's a bit of both, then yes. Reason being is at the end of the day, this goes to Evergreen what Coach Carroll wants to do in his bones. He wants to try to build another legendary defense probably. He wants another running back in there as his feature guy and to be able to make that his offense for the most part. That's what he really wants to lean into. And if you force him to accept everything Wilson wants, you now have two different opposing sides banging heads completely at that point, where a coach is like begrudgingly doing what a player wants, but he hates every second of it. Why? You can only trade 3 picks out, so LV can't offer more than first threes. I didn't know that. I thought you could offer more. Well, you can always do it in different other ways then too, can't you? So if it's not 5 first-round picks, it could be 3 seconds and 3/3, couldn't it? It doesn't have to be necessarily that one methodology to it. They could just be offering a lot more. You probably aren't going to get that kind of haul, but you can find an equivalent off of 5 first-round picks and other draft choices if you can only do 3. I know you can offer more than 2, James. 3 has been offered in the past. So the Rams traded 3 first-round picks back in the day to trade up and get. It wasn't Robert Griffin? No, it was Washington football team trade up 3 first-round picks to get Robert Griffin. Jerry O'Malley, am I crazy to think it may be possible to trade Russ for a haul to the Raiders, then in turn trade that haul plus lock and potentially other icing to the Texans for Watson? No, you could move that direction. I've maintained, Jerry, that there's no way that there's a deal that works with us moving Wilson for Watson in any way, shape, or form. But if you went out and did that with Wilson, then yeah, you could go in a different direction to bringing back Watson, and if they wanted to go that route. Yeah, absolutely, Jerry. Absolutely. Great idea. Love the thought. I like to watch NFL. Hey, can you make me a mod on Discord? My name is I like to watch NFL, and we already talked about it on DMs. I will try to. I like to watch NFL again. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time troubleshooting Discord. It's its own beast and animal that I got to get in there. I'd like to just put a couple of admins. So I have a few admins in there. I'd like you guys to reach out to them to get mods. That would be my preferable way, because I don't need another thing I got to manage here on the channel. It's enough trying to just get you guys with good content, work on the Great Seahawk Moment video, stay up on my research, all that stuff. B. Russ, not sure if you can use the Penny will go off given more carries. Could he just get more than 10 carries when he's hot in that particular game? I'm still high on Penny though. The reason that I point to the 10 carry stat, B. Russ, is I would say that the reason he's limited in the 10 carry stat is that they love themselves Chris Carson, and they were still loving themselves this inside zone scheme. So we get real simplistic on this. I think on this given situation, the respective, it comes down to quite simply, Coach Carroll likes running inside zone. He wants to hammer. He wants to wear defenses out. He's got that Marshawn Lynch-like running back on his roster in Chris Carson. And then he's got this other guy that's the big play guy that he wants to just kind of work in here and there, because it's hard for him to embrace the big play guy over the guy that gets him to 3 yards in a cloud of dust and wears defenses down. So I don't know that Penny didn't get a lot of carries as much because he wasn't good enough. I think it shows quite the opposite. The fact is that when you did give him these carries, he had an opportunity to do something, and these carries happen at all different times. So it's data that comes from a variety of different games, not just a one-off or a two-off. I think there's a lot to take off of it, actually. Thank you, Nathaniel, for mentioning that. Do please smash that like button for me, please, if you're watching this channel. It does help me grow. We are a mere 30 subscribers away from 4,000. So by you smashing that like button, even if you're already subscribed, you're not already subscribed, what are you doing? It does get me some more subscribers. So please smash, smash, smash. John Robinson, I would love to see Russ in a more college-based scheme and an 11 easy throws a game to help Russ get in rhythm and help the O-line. Me too, John, which is a little bit of what this scheme should do for him in that respect. It should do a lot more of being able to allow him easier throws because teams can't predict you pre-snap as much as they once could. You're going to run out formation after formation that looks very much the same time and time again. And you're just going to run a lot of different things out of it. And it makes it impossible for teams to then find those keys pre-snap to go off of. In fact, that's really at the base of the scheme is that you remove the keys. You make everything look the same play in and play out. So those things should help him in allowing guys to get open quicker and easier because defenses are trying to concentrate things on like the run first and foremost. Yui says, I think the clearest trade path is the Bears. 3 number ones plus Mac. Both have huge cap hits. Pete would love it. We'd be much closer to a dominant D. It would interest me as well. I think I think you hit the nail on the head on what exactly the price would be at that point. I don't know if you'd get anything else in addition beyond the 3s in Mac. But Mac is a hell of a player. He would be your Leo end here. He would kill it in that respect. Still a very good player in this league right now. I think he's just barely turned 30 years old. His cap hits going forward aren't monstrous because all the bonus money would come off from his end on that deal as well. There's a lot of upside to it. And as you said, it would go towards rebuilding that defense into a dominant defense at that point. John Robinson says Bears would never give up Mac. Maybe. Maybe. I don't think that would be the thing that sticks in their craw as far as something that if they wanted Wilson bad enough. I mean, that's what this comes down to is right now it's in the moment of a team not realizing they're this magical quarterback that would be on the market for them. And suddenly now he's on the market. And does that get people frothing at the mouth to buy, being willing to go outside of what their normal comfort zone would be? I would think that being the fact that there's never been a quarterback exactly like this out on the market and available like this, it would draw in a tidy sum. Even the type of sum, John, that you might think would be normally untouchable. Michael, we should focus on trading with an AFC team. Jets, Raiders, get a bunch of draft picks. Is Gardner Minshew worth a chance? Young and cheap. I'm not on the Gardner Minshew train. No, and you're going to lose the Gardner Minshew cheapness very soon because once he gets past 3 years and he's not a first-round pick, you don't have 2 other years of cheap club control like you do first-rounders. So this means that he goes out there and balls out this year, he's due to get paid next year. It sort of destroys the whole philosophy behind having the quarterback position be young, cheap, and talented. I'm not as much on board with this thing that it has to be going to an AFC team. I'm not. Russell Wilson's already come out and limited some of the value of what you could get back in a trade, and that he's pared down the scope of potential teams he's willing to be traded to. So now you want to lower down that scope and even further. Well, now you're really not going to end up getting back the draft compensation you're looking to get back from this guy at that point. If it comes down to getting the maximum draft capital, but it comes from an NFC team, it sucks, but the whole situation sucks, doesn't it? You know, there's no good right way to where I feel good about this coming out the other end of this. So, you know, it kind of is what it is. I'm not convinced you send Russell Wilson to the Bears and he suddenly turns the Bears into this world beater that comes around every year and smashes the hell out of us. Actually, quite the opposite would be my feeling on if he went to the Bears. I think that would be a tactical mistake by Russell Wilson, and he would see that be a poor decision in retrospect. Jerry O'Malley, I don't think the Seahawks would trade Russ in the NFC either, if I'm being honest, unless it was an absolute insane deal. Yeah, to me, it's just all about who's going to give me the most. Gimme. No discounts. You're paying full price. You're not estimated retail. No. You're not factory retail. You can throw that little invoice away, sucker. You're paying all the way to the moon. All the way to the moon. I want it all. I want it all. Why, dude, wide? I was wrong. Can we trade picks up to 4 years out? No limit on how many picks, though. Oh, you can only trade up to 4 years out? Okay. Well, it's an equivalency for me. It's just if we have to eat the dead money for me, then you're giving me the equivalent of 2 basically extra first-round picks. That's $39 million of dead money. 2 of them is what you're throwing me for that. So that's a mighty sum to have me hit my cap. That's going to hurt me. It's going to make it hard to roster build into next year. You asking me to do that and then hand you this Hall of Fame quarterback in the middle of his prime at the same time, I'm going to get the biggest haul in NFL history as far as my compensation is concerned. Randall, the longer we go without the team addressing it, the more likely it is to happen. If the S really hits the fan, Pete is going to bail. History has a way of repeating. It does. I mean, he's got an out at any one point in time here, doesn't he, Randall? Because you can just hit the retirement button. It's like, I'm 70. I got tired this year, and it's going to completely let him out at that point and whatever. Frankly, at that point, I'd be fine with it, though. If we moved on then at that point to a new coach and to me, it's just kind of time in a lot of respects. So I wouldn't care whatever at that point. But yeah, you're right. This escalating of the situation, the lack of soothing, the lack of comforting either Russell Wilson or the Pacific Northwest fans in this respect, I think it is speaking a lot. Cameron Hughes says all the teams Russell picked, had offensive-minded head coaches. He did. That's one part where it does make sense with it. But if that's his only metric for the team that he's going to, and he's looking at Tom Brady as the model for what to do next year as far as how to get him to this next place to look to another team, well, he's not really utilizing the model well. Brady tactically chose the Buccaneers. It was going to be everybody else, wasn't it? It was going to be maybe the Colts, and then maybe the 49ers, who supposedly I think there was something with that deal. They turned him down for Garoppolo supposedly. But then it was the Chargers. He was looking at certain specific teams where it can make sense, where there's a young talent, there's a great defense, there's this, there's that, and then he chose the best with the Buccaneers, where it's that great talent on defense. It's got Mike Godwin and Evans to throw to, O.J. Howard, a top 20 first-round pick at tight end, an offensive line built up and that'll accommodate him nicely. Even a guy, he's a nice running back before they had Fournette in there. They had Jones in there who was an up-and-coming running back for them. So he kind of challenged, but with the Bears, Robinson's going to probably move on. Whitehair is your best guy on the offensive line, which is fine, guard, center type guy, but you don't really have much at tackle, really. Not really. No playmakers at that point. Your running back position is light as hell. I mean, Jimmy Graham, 57-year-old Jimmy Graham is basically his number one tight end at that point. They have no picks to go from what they're going to have to give up to bring him in. How does he think that they're going to team build up around them? The Packers are still going to be tough for years to come. Maybe the Vikings are on the downswing. Maybe the Lions are on the downswing, but just I don't know, weird. Saints cap hell. They're in a worse situation. You're going to go over there and they're in cap hell. How are you going to get out from under it? Like, you thinking you're going to turn around that good just because Peyton's such a great offensive mind in that point that he'll do it? That's where I come back to some of the stuff doesn't make sense to me with it on some of these teams. Oakland makes sense because you can go with AFC West. It's tough, but maybe he feels like he can do something there. Gruden's an offensive guy for sure. He's going to give Russ whatever he wants, carte blanche. They got a little bit more. I think the offensive line's better there than I think some of these other prospective teams out there outside of New Orleans. But New Orleans is freaking $95 million over the cap. I mean, they're beyond the pale, be over the cap. Clara, hello from New York. Love the facial hair. I got a little beard going for you, Claire. Thoughts on Russell Wilson staying or leaving? We need a new running back. We need new running back that stays healthy. I think I still maintain it's hard to make this deal happen this year, but it's an ever-changing situation, Claire. Don't think it'll happen this year, but I'm not. My confidence is getting shaken by the day with every news story that leaks out from Wilson's camp or from the Seahawks front office. Throwing one, each side's like it's two monkeys on either side of the room throwing poo at each other is what I feel like we're watching here a little bit. And you're like, stop, guys. Just stop. Stop. Can we get along? We're on this together. It's the part where it's like, I don't like this mudflinging, this, well, he did this. Well, Russell stormed out of this meeting. Well, Pete Carroll's got his sons in doing his stuff, and they're running the whole show. He's not answering to anybody. Well, some of these sacks are on you. It's just, it's getting weird, Clara. It's getting weird. What do you think this does to the team? What is DK, Tyler, Bobby, et cetera, thinking? If this looks like a lost year with a rebuild coming, I wonder what it does for contract negotiations. hard to predict on this, Randall. I mean, we never run into a situation like this historically. So anybody telling you that they know how the fallout's going to go with the other players that are surrounding the team, I think are probably lying to you. I mean, who really does know? I would think that you can expect there being some folks to go. There might be some folks that are okay with it. I don't know. I truly don't know. I think it has a lot to do with also what they do in addition to those moves. If Russell goes, well, who's coming in? Who is the quarterback? How much of a rebuild is it? Are we starting from scratch? I do think if you're moving on from Russell, at that point, there's a huge likelihood, I think, that you're then moving on from Bobby and Tyler both at that point, because you're not competing for a next year. Tyler's up for the extension. Bobby, you can save some money off of. And at that point, you move into next year, the year after, having cleared out all of Bobby's money, having cleared out all of Russell's money. And then you could throw the world at DK if you wanted to, and you still have the leverage in DK. That's the thing with that, Randall, is if you have to franchise tag DK Metcalf for 2 years, you're going to do it. And there's not a lot he can do about that, really, at the end of the day. He can wait out his first 8 games of the season and come back each of those times, but I'm sure Seattle would probably still do at that point. So he'll probably just sign the extension at that point with the leverage Seattle still has over the top of him. It'll cost a boatload, but then you've got a lot more money there you've cleared out to be able to fit it in. John, I love my 3-player trade of Jets, Cowboys, and Hawks. Russell to the Cowboys, Dak to the Jets, and Seattle gets the 3rd and 10th pick this year. Seahawks get guaranteed top quarterback for cheap and can trade back. 3 players. Okay, so I'm trying to think on this now. Okay, so DK. So we would get the 3rd for that, and then we would get the... I mean, John, if they're willing to give that kind of draft capital, I like it. I like it. Very imaginative, man. Imaginative, and yeah. I mean, shoot. You could sit back. You get your franchise left tackle of future and Penny Sewell too. You can go so many different ways at that direction. And at 10, you should be able to get Trey Lance if you wanted. B-Russ, what's insane is if Russ goes to Chicago, he could potentially be the stat record holder for all-time Seahawks and Bears quarterback. Don't think anyone has ever been the best quarterback in 2 franchises' histories. Yeah, maybe that's some of his thinking with it too, B-Russ. He's a legacy guy, so he's thinking legacy, and that would be a pretty cool legacy to have, to say you got 2 teams that you go to those towns, you own both of those towns when you go to them. Seahawks, so if you trade Wilson, I think Wagner and Adams get traded. I think you blow up everything. I also wonder what DK would want, whether he would sign an extension. I could see the first 2 things happening, like you said. I wouldn't be surprised if Adams wanted to stay just to build, knowing that this defense is going to be built up and souped up around him. That might be pretty interesting to a young defensive star like him. But I could see Wagner wanting to go to play for one more ring somewhere else at that point, for sure. I'm not sure on the Metcalf thing because, again, it's the leverage game here. Yes, after the 3rd year, he's eligible for a new contract, but you can slap a franchise tag on him. And at that point, you can match any offer out there that he gets, right? He gets franchise, somebody who signs the offer, you can match the offer, you get the 2 first-round picks from the team that he signs with. So we're still a year out on DK even being in that game of that having happened. I think we've got to wait it out a little bit. But it is probably an important question to check with DK after the trade about where he stands. They probably want to take a pulse on that. Washi, I tried the link and it's not working. I just tried a new account and it's not working. Both accounts. Something's weird. Okay. I'll text my guy here. 1 second. Okay. Brent, it makes sense when Russ told Mark Cuban he wanted to own a team. Thus, now it's more about money for him. The podcast came at a time when he was throwing picks and fumbling. Yeah, it's a little of like some of this stuff. It's okay for Russell to wonder about his legacy and all that. I think a little of it's happening a bit early here. It's like you think about legacies, you get to the back end of your career, not as you're in the middle of your prime normally. And when you start talking about some of this stuff, it's again like, so many plans, so many things that you want. I'll do this all over here and all this over there and I'll do all this over there. It's like, be a great quarterback. Like, concentrate on that. Yui, I agree with you on Penny, but what do you do if he gets hurt? No viable starting caliber running backs available has been an issue long enough. Well, I don't ride on Penny, Huey, and say that it's only Penny. Remember, and part of my offseason proposition was to bring in a guy like Fournette. I have maintained for a long period of time, I would look at the draft like every year between rounds 4 and 7. I target certain guys that fit into my Seahawk running back mold that I would look for. I would be okay at Huey if they went for Javonte Williams in the second round and paired Penny with Javonte Williams at that point. It's a lot of draft capital put in the running back position, kind of goes against what the analytics tell us. But a big also part of this, the third rung of this, Huey, is that I believe that we should be building up the offensive line. That was also in my plan for the offseason. And I've been a big believer, Huey, in that if you build up the offensive line to be a strength on the football team, that it helps out other positions, specifically the running back position. So you're less reliant on needing a superstar there because there's going to be a lot of big holes. And I think one of the things with our offensive line over recent years that stood out to me is that while there's been some struggles in pass protections, and we don't argue on that, I don't think, there's times when they don't always are able to drive guys off the ball in the running game. And the running game can sometimes be just a little bit inconsistent. So I think that's not as had much to do with the talent at running back. You've had Carson throughout that time. I think it's had as much to do with just, again, turning that offensive line into a strength rather than just a sub, I wouldn't call it a sub weakness, but just an okay part of your team, an average part of your team. James Glenn says, I'd trade Bobby Lockett and Jaron Reed. I'd keep Adams and Dunlap. I'd probably go that route too. Jose Rodriguez, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you on in here. Defined by definition, are we trading Russ? What are your thoughts on viable return if we do? Should we go to the draft or try to trade for a quarterback? How do you feel about the tenure it will take to rebound from moving on from him? Yeah, I put together a little list last night. We've talked a little bit about it on the stream here. If I'm going from the Raiders, basically here are my hauls, and I'm going to look at it through pretty much just the. We can go through all the points here. So the Bears, like someone spoke about earlier, I had written down Bears 3 number ones and a Mac is probably what you're getting. I would do 3 number ones and Cody Whitehair plus a second rounder if we're going to go as an alternative. With Oakland, I look at it as 3 number ones as your starting place. I'm then going to steal from them Rodney Hudson, Trayvon Mullen, and I want 2 twos in addition to that. And again, I want the big haul. Because I got to eat that cap hit. If there's some situation here where Russell is willing to give back some of his bonus money, I'm going to be a little bit less needing to have as big a haul. But you've got to make up for that cap hit that I'm going to take if I got to eat it. And then with the Cowboys, I have 3 number ones, 2 number twos, and a 5th round pick. And part of the reason the Raiders have to give up a little bit more in draft capital along with players is because, of course, they're picking it nearly the end of the first round. So it's a little bit of difference. Cowboys are at 10. With the Saints, I've got 3 number ones, 2 seconds, Ryan Ramczyk, and a 3rd. So I'm asking for quite a big haul from the Saints. Again, got to eat that money. They're going to have to deal with it. And so we already spoke to the Bears. Mac, 3 ones or 3 ones, Cody Whitehair, and a second round pick. Washi. Yeah, we'll figure it out, Washi. We'll get to the call line here in a second. We'll get it all figured out. So just bear with me on it, man. Jarl, do you think if Pete does the right thing and gets this thing fixed and we were to somehow win a Super Bowl, do you think Pete would hang it up after this year? No. I would get the impression, Jarl, that if Coach Carroll was to go on some dynastic 10-year run right now, he would stay right on board through every inch of it. I think that he's a guy that... there's a lot of guys out there that are very aware of this as you get older, which is that there's those guys that go out there and they work and it's all about getting to that retirement age. And then they get that retirement age and there's nothing for them to do and they die within a year. They lose all of the drive to get anything done in life. And I think that, I don't know that Coach Carroll thinks that way. I tend to think that a guy in his 70s who's still working like he does probably does. And so if he does think that way, then he probably would hang on here until it was just super obvious where he had to go, I think. James, initially I wasn't trading for Lockett, but Brandon talked me into it. I'm glad I brought you on board, James. I know it's a tough one, and it's not one I came to easily with thinking it'll happen, but it's one that I think will probably occur this offseason, one way or another. I would be very surprised to see them going into next year not having signed Lockett to a contract extension and then just having him play out the year. Sorry, mods know on Discord stuff's not working. Randall, is Russ delusional? He has fame, the brand, the commercials. Coddling made him rest on his laurels. Russ loves himself some Russell Wilson. The Mamba mentality shirts bugged me for some reason. Entered prima donna status. It's the cultivating of everything. It's everything being cultivated. It's image cultivation, and it's public relations cultivation, and it's a lot of stuff that I like Russell as a person. I think he's a good human being, truly at the core of his being. But he's got these aspects of his personality sometimes that do drive me crazy and have driven me at most crazy this particular offseason, I think, because we've seen him most at play. We have a quarterback that has a effing perfume. A perfume. Starting quarterback, Hall of Fame quarterback with a perfume in the middle of his career. It's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of ridiculous. And there's more of I wish we could get out of Russ sometimes. It was just more organic and felt just a little bit more, less like trying to manipulate the situation from the background like a puppeteer and more of just like, here's how it is, really. I don't know if it's capable on that in certain respects. Micah Parker, geographic escape is a medical phenomenon. People under high stress or pressure cope by moving to a different, completely new environment. They think it will solve the deficiency. Russ is hurting. Oh, that's interesting, Michael. That's an interesting perspective on it, man. I hadn't really considered that, but I think that is probably a real thing. I've known folks like that would move around a bunch like that, and maybe that is the case. Maybe that's the case. Got notes on Greg Newsome. I do not yet, Maxwell, sorry. But I will add him to my list if I haven't already added him to my list. I'm getting through the names. There's a lot of guys this year, man. There's a lot of guys, and I'm trying to get through them all, but there's a lot. So let me see here. Who'd you get? Who'd you got? Newsome? Greg Newsome? Okay. Newsome. I'll take a look at him. We're doing pretty good so far. So this is this year's of scouted guys who have gotten through here as we're starting to. So we're pretty good. Not bad. Not super thick quite yet. And then this was last year's, of course. This is last year's with all mine in there. So it's getting up there. It's getting up there. Eventually I'm going to have years catalog and all that stuff. But I'll take a look at him. We'll get you in, Washi, on this Discord. Eduardo, how you doing, Eduardo? Good to see you on in here. Seahawks, trade Wilson. I think you have to completely blow everything up, including Pete and John, restart completely. I get where you're coming from on that, Seahawks, but Pete and John aren't going away, right? Both just signed a contract extension, my man. They're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. Brian Roberts, Wilson's family is close to the Bryan family. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Why, dude, why? I just the thing with Brian is like he turns on a camera and starts, it's this whole thing. Okay. I might have to fix the server offline, guys. This Discord thing is super complicated to set up, guys. Like, it's not fun to figure this out. Every little tiny individual setting. We'll get back to Discord later. I might have to just put that on the back burner. But it's Brian. I hate that. Just the video. Puts himself in a deal jersey and just, and you're like, come on, dude. John, I meant that the only counter to six-man fronts blitzing is the three-step to get the ball out quick. The Belichick six-man front he implemented in Super Bowl stops play action and outside zone. Yes, that's one way to do it. There's never just one way to necessarily attack John. So there's other ways you can do it. Screen game also would work with that situation if they're going to bring that many to the box, especially if they're going to blitz with the majority of those six men coming, as has been recently the case with Seattle when they get the stack fronts. Well, then you're going to have a little bit of more of an opening up in the screen game. But we didn't embrace much of the screen game as much recently. I think that's a part of this game that they're going to offer into there. But it's one of the places you would normally use. And again, the six-man front that they were doing was when they had the wide receiver, the heavy wide, the three wide receiver personnel is what they were bringing out for that, John. And that's how they attacked with the six-man fronts. The adjustment to that was for them to then go to the two tight end sets, the Rams, over the last couple of years, and then run play action off of the two tight end sets. And it was not always three-step drops because you have the two tight ends on either side of the tackle to protect against blitzing pressure coming off the edges. So you can seal one side and then roll a quarterback around the other way and keep the pressure clear. Randall says, in times of turmoil, leadership above all else is what's needed. Pete has the title, judge, and jury. It's chicken S that Pete hasn't addressed this. It really bugs me. Seems cowardly. Yeah, he should be addressing this. He should be speaking up. There's a lot of stories out there, and he's just sort of letting it twist in the wind right now. But it's, again, when you don't have power and you don't answer to anyone, why would you feel you need to answer to us or the public or the media? And frankly, I think we've gotten a lot of that off of Coach Carroll over the last couple of years. You see him in his media interactions. They've been more tense than they used to be. He's been more willing to sort of jump on things, and it's like they don't ask him a lot of tough questions. I sometimes think some of that is because it's like he's sort of taught and trained them around. You better not, or I'll jump on you about it. But it's a valid criticism. Jose, yeah, we're having our problem with the Discord, I guess. Folks, let's put a moratorium for this channel, for this show at least, just on the Discord. I'll figure it out as I can. It's just become like a thing. I know you guys must love this Discord thing, but I'm not enjoying my interactions with it. And it's making me think to just shut it down because it's like an obsessive thing. The thing I first turned it on now, and it's become a thing. So I don't know on this. Joey, so Jose, I'll try to. What's essentially happened, Jose, is I turned it on, and then I got 50 trolls in there, and then I got 50 people wanting to be mods, and then I got 50 people asking me why I'm modding this person, and then just like, I can't go in there and be a babysitter in the Discord. So that's the problem here, is that you can't rely on people to act like adults in there. They just want to go in there and be kids and throw memes at each other and see who can burn each other the hardest. It's a weird environment going in there. Joey, I love it. Building a legendary defense thoughts. Pete struck lightning in a bottle. He got lucky with a bunch of Hall of Famers in the beginning of his tenure. Not realistic. Modernize and adapt. Yeah, it's not going to be easy to do it again. In retrospect of this, if he drafted a lot of Hall of Famers, how many people are going to the Hall of Fame from that Legion of Boom era? This historically great defense, how many do we figure of all these, the Steelers defense in the 70s had about 5, 6, 7 guys, I think, went to the Hall of Fame off that defense. The Bears defense in the mid-80s had like 5 or 6 players that went to the Hall of Fame off of it. Tampa Bay Buccaneers got their safety and a defensive tackle and a linebacker. I don't know if Rondé Barber will ever get in there, but he might have a chance because he's got a lot of interceptions in his career and he played an awful long time. How many off that Legion of Boom era are really going to be Hall of Famers? Sherman? Wagner? And that's probably going to be it. So in retrospect, and historically speaking retrospect, when you look at those players, and I love those players, great players, but you didn't stack a team up with 8 Hall of Famers. You put a very complete defense together. I brought up a stat last week about the pressure rate Seattle was able to generate in those 2 magical years of 13 and 14 when they were really at their best, really cooking. And they had the best pressure rate in the entire NFL. And it's such a startling stat because built within the defense of this tired and boring scheme is supposed to be easy completions. Well, if those easy completions are there, how were they able to generate pressure like they were able to generate? Teams knew they could get the ball out of their hand in under 2.5 seconds, which is literally the representation for pass rush win rate, is that you get there in under 2.5 seconds. But the reason they were able to do it is because they had a ferocious front four that could get after the quarterback and they could drop as many guys into coverage as they could have. They have not, in the time since basically 2014, been able to replicate that, partly a little bit, yeah, because of poor drafting and poor decision-making, partly because they don't have the resources to put into that side of the ball like they did before. That defensive line, when it was generating that pass rush win rate, I believe was also the highest paid unit in the league at the very same time. McBain was being played, Clemens was being paid, you had Irvin on a first round contract. Clemens got like $6-7 million. Bennett was getting paid. And even like a guy like Clint McDonald, like $3.5 million or something that one year. Like everybody's making money. You invested in that defensive line. And so my point on this is that I understand that they did have a real good magical stretch of draft where they picked guys and got guys late that you normally aren't going to get. Understood all that. But they also haven't had a chance to really put back in the resources to that defensive side of the ball like they once did. And I don't think that they're necessarily going to create a historically great defense again, but that's not what we're really needing to do, is it? We need to build a defense good enough to get to the Super Bowl. We don't need a historically great defense necessarily. And I would argue that those things are kind of two different things. You see a historically great defense once every 20 years, but a great defense wins every single season in the Super Bowl. Or usually. Usually the team has a great defense. James Glenn, you guys remember that 2019 game in Pittsburgh? Russ wasn't getting the ball out in record time. Was getting the ball out in record time. He hasn't done it since. Yeah, it was a shocking game to watch, James, because it was a game where Pittsburgh was going to blitz. He got the ball out of his hands, and he hit his hot route. There are games where he's able to do it from time to time. He just consistently doesn't necessarily string it together. Ewing says, Russ, trade options were weird, but after some thought, I can see it. Russ might think he can lead these teams to the playoffs at minimum, so why stay somewhere you think doesn't respect your opinions? Could be that. Why? I just did not understand the lack of adjustments to the scheme quarterback play last year. You can't keep holding the ball trying to throw deep against deep coverage. Yeah, agreed. And it was frustrating to watch that team offensively on the back end of the schedule. I struggled to pinpoint it to just one person or one party or just two parties. I think everybody has to share some blame in that. John says, do you think Taysom Hill would flourish in our system? I think so. The running game and hitting short and intermediate zones and passing attack and play action and passing game, definitely be exciting to see. Maybe, man. He's not had a lot of history of playing out there very much. He's a little bit of an older player. Those wheels aren't going to stay there for very much longer with him. He's going to start losing his own athleticism here as we go along pretty soon. It doesn't do a lot for me, Taysom Hill. I could see where it could work, John. I do see that. I'm not saying it would be like a failure, him bringing him in, but I come back again and again to I want a rookie quarterback, probably a first-round quarterback with 5 years of club control. That's what I want. That's my target sign. I'm not really looking for an aging quarterback who can't get it done or a guy who's limited as a passer but a great mobile guy. Because, again, you're still paying those guys money on top of potentially this year taking a $39 million cap hit to Russell. I mean, what are you going to do then, taking $11 million of Taysom Hill at that point and then $50 million into the quarterback position this year? I don't know. Defined by definition, take Russ and flip him with Stafford in Detroit. There's been no O-line, but he always had guys to dump the ball to and give it to. Yeah, it's so much of this is about a quarterback's got to embrace the check down game. I mean, this is within the building blocks of our defense. Defense is very simplistic, and it's almost silly at times when you think about it, where our defense says, okay, we're going to just keep the deep, we're going to go against the deep ball, we're going to protect everything deep, we're going to let you hit us underneath on short passes, we're going to force you to be patient. And you would think, like logically speaking, as a layman, well, just be patient, offenses. Just keep taking what they give them. And you do see sometimes quarterbacks are willing to do that, but there's so many other times the quarterbacks eventually get, like their feet get cold and they've got to make that deep throw. They've got to attack deep. They just have to do it. And our team has been, Russell Wilson and the way our teams played offensively have been an example of that. That there just are some teams that are hard-headed and just won't take the short, easy throw, won't just be patient and work their way up the field. It's like it goes against everything inside them to do it. You've got to do it in this modern age, though, Randall. There's too many teams that play zones. There's too much of the cover two coming back into the factor of things. Teams are letting teams now kind of hit those shorter routes and trusting them to be patient, and teams just will not stay in that mode. Randall says, if we cut Dunlap and then not able to re-sign him, it will really bug me. Would he be thrifty with why be thrifty with key positions, but then sign bad contracts? Throw picks away and then have a crisis of no picks. I don't know. I would not know why there'd be any reason why you would want with him this year to keep. I know the $14 million cost a lot, but the guy was the most effective pass rusher in the NFL over the back half of the season. He looked revitalized here in Seattle, looked like a new player. Yeah, he's a little older, and yeah, it's a big hit, but it's a one-year hit. And it's for a guy that gives you one certainty there on the defensive line and defensive end and edge rush that you don't have right now. You got 4 young guns, and you don't know if any of them got any bullets in those guns. They're big guns, they're shiny, they got the ivory handle. You just don't know if they'll actually fire. So he's the one guy you do. Jake Mason says, imagine Khalil Mack, Bobby Wagner, Jamal Adams, and Dunlap on the same defense. I think you'd be pretty good, Jake, don't you? I think they'd be pretty good. That'd be a pretty good unit. Huey, Bears would absolutely give up on Mack. His cap hit is ridiculous. He's aging, and Bears fans would give their firstborn for Wilson. They're already losing their mind at the very idea. Agreed. I don't think Mack is something that would keep the Wilson. I mean, do we honestly believe with the Bears who've never had a franchise quarterback basically in their history since Sid Luckman? Do you think that they would be sitting there going, oh no, we can't have Wilson. This is the place. That's too far for us. That you need Mack, then we're going to be out on Wilson at that point. We're willing to give you all this stuff, but then you want us to throw him in as no. That's too, like, come on. Maybe they would, but I don't buy it. D-Mac, how you doing, D? What's up? Israel, F for us, fleece the Raiders. I love it. John Robinson, I heard our front office hung up on a bunch of front offices. I'm wondering if they lowballed because they think he's going to demand a trade later, hence decreasing his value. Yeah, I would hope they're not hanging up on people unless it's that. You want at least to be listening. And I would tend to think that, look, this is the team that prides itself, John, on being in on every deal, not necessarily executing every one, but just being listening in on everyone. So why would they not in this case want to at least hear what teams are saying? And I would agree with that. It's probably being a low ball offer. This goes back to the negotiation days. You're always taught, if you're in a sales thing of any kind of class, go back to your college days. If you're trying to negotiate a deal and you put an offer down, or somebody puts an offer down to you and it's absolutely ridiculous and not even close to what you're looking for, you don't counter them to try to get the offer back to near you want. You stand up off the table, you shake their hand and you say, you know what, we just can't get a deal here. And that's the equivalent of what he's doing there. You force those teams, you better come stronger with this than that. That's not going to get this done. So they're going to, I'm sure, hold these teams, and I'd be hanging up on them too at that point if they're giving me, we'll give you 2 first rounders and we'll give you that. How about that? No. John, Brandon, speak on maybe Russ not flourishing in another system and the Seahawks knowing Russ better and already tailoring their offense. What's the true blind spot in all this Russ talk? Well, it's where the rubber will meet the road here, John. I mean, Russ says, I want an offensive-minded coach who's going to build around my strengths and everything else, which is fine and dandy, and it may work. And he may go on to flourish like never before in his career and finally become that MVP that he so wants to become. Maybe. There's the flip side to it on that, John, is that the Seattle Seahawks over the course of 10 years have learned Russell Wilson better than anybody else league-wide as far as their quarterback. They know what he can do. They know what he can't do. They know what he struggles with. You would think maybe feasibly there's some of these things that we've talked and asked to see Russell do better on. They've been down that road with him already maybe multiple times, and it's just not gotten better. Pre-snap recognition, ability to figure out where a blitz is coming from, be able to have more control at the line of scrimmage. I've talked at it ad nauseum. And I think that there's something to be said. He goes to one of these offensive coordinators like a Sean Payton, and Sean Payton starts saying, okay, we got these routes here. You're going to have to throw these passes in the game. I'm going to need you to do it at certain points, at certain times, be on time, hit that back throw, be accurate, and put it with anticipation, where very well Russell could struggle in those. I'm not 100% convinced he just goes to a new offensive masterminded guy, and that guy just brings out this level we've never seen. It could happen, but there's a lot of Russell's game that I do wonder about, John, that if it's not, is what it is. He's 10 years in the league. It hasn't come along. To think some new skill pops up to the surface year 10, year 11, year 12. I haven't seen a lot of recent history of that in quarterbacks. The die is kind of cast by that point. D-Boy says, do you think that Russ is being real about this, or do you think this is just his way of saying, protect me or else I'm gone? I've waffled back and forth, D-Boy, on this. I go back and forth between trying to figure out what it is, he's doing here. If he really is pushing for change and that this is the only way that he could feasibly get Carroll to move off of his spot was to make it this public and drive it like this. But then there's times where I go back to thinking he just really wants out. He's fed up. And I waffle D-Boy back between the two. And part of it is because we don't hear anything from the Seahawks front office. We get a lot from Russell Wilson leaked through. None of it seems very good. It does tend to make me, with each and every leak, D-Boy, lean in the direction of he's just fed up and wants out. And he's just trying to find a good way to get out the door without burning the whole village down on his way out. But there feels like that's what he's kind of drawing towards, in my opinion. And I hope not. I hope it is just to drive towards change. But boy, he's pushing awfully hard. Cameron, maybe Russ does want to play with Jimmy Graham. Yeah, maybe he wants to reconnect with him. He's like, man, we still have all that untapped stuff there, bro. Unfinished business, Jimmy. Unfinished business. D-Boy, it's just hard for me seeing him go when he's so invested with the city of Seattle. It would be hard for me too, D-Boy. I'm not celebrating him leaving at all. I don't want to see him leave. And these stories are hard. This has been a tough offseason, hasn't it? It felt like already like a full offseason, hasn't it, with the amount of stories that have broke that have been negative. It's like we haven't gotten even to free agency yet. And I'm exhausted with the Russell like stuff that just keeps coming out. This is not going to be a clean break, man. You know, it's tough. This is really a tough situation to watch play, man. Something that was so great and awesome at one time that's just sort of, it feels like it's kind of falling apart. But you never know, D-Boy. You never know. Maybe there's a glint of hope here that this thing does turn around and somebody jumps to the front, acts like an adult in the situation and just a leader and says, let's bring this together and let's fix this. Let's stop talking to the media. Let's sit in a room. Let's hash this out. JS says Russell is invested in LA too. D-Boy says not saying it's impossible because anything's possible. Absolutely, buddy. Yeah, LA, Russell's definitely invested in LA. I think the only thing with him in LA is I think that's made it tough is just he knows Carroll would never trade him to the Rams. And then Chargers got Herbert now. I think part of Russ was thinking maybe if Herbert fell off this year that'd be a feasible spot for him to go to. But nope, they got their QB of the future, so he's got no route to get into LA. Oakland would be the only way to do it, I guess, which is a far jump there. Mary, how you doing, Mary? We need an O-line and a healthy running back. Agreed. Top of my list for this offseason as far as priority is re-upping that offensive line, getting that turned into a strength of the football club. Michael says maybe Russ thinks NFC West will be brutal for the next few years. He will do better in an easier division. Could be. That's the one thing you say about the NFC North is there always seems to be two teams that are crap shows going on at any one time. Defined by definition, I'd love to see some of those battles in the NFC West with Russ plugged in there. Yeah, it'd be cool. Mary, I want to see Jamal Adams in better coverage. I feel like we don't use him to his potential. I think they were married trying to figure out Jamal Adams last year, and I think people get caught a little bit up on his coverage grade scores, which were pretty bad by Pro Football Focus last year, and rightfully so. He struggled in coverage. I think there were also times like when you're putting him on Stephon Diggs in the slot, you weren't exactly setting Jamal up to be successful in coverage in those moments. But I also think he was fighting through injuries as well, and I would tend to believe that you give him a season to get off season of healthiness, that he'll be a lot better in coverage. He graded out very well in coverage through his first couple of years in this league. Pro Football Focus, he was doing just fine with the Jets, and suddenly had one bad year here with Seattle, and now he's bad in coverage. I don't quite buy it. Huey, a trade would be a poor decision on both sides, but it is what it is. Bears already a playoff team with a bad quarterback. Russ's low salary would leave money to build offensive line. Already have solid D, good running backs, and good wide receivers. You think the Bears got good wide receivers and good running backs? I don't know on that one. They did have a playoff team, that's for sure. But I'm not as sold on them as a complete unit, man. Randall, do you think other teams and media value Russ more than we do? Yeah, it's weird because I think through the first 7 years of his career, Randall, I think that he was undervalued by the media in the national perspective. I think they didn't understand how good of a quarterback he truly was through that time period. And then I think now, over the last couple of years, it's almost like it's turned in the other direction and it's overcompensated a little bit, where now the media is just like, oh, he's this quarterback who can do no wrong, and Seattle's doing wrong by him to a small degree. Some of this is a little bit of Russell's camp pushing this narrative to make it happen. They've been very good about playing the media a little bit like a fiddle here. But yeah, it swung the other direction, I think. Deb Peterson says, Russ loves us and we love him. He's staying. Hope so, Dev. I hope so. Huey, Russ left Jets and Dolphins off his list, maybe because these two offer Seahawks best chance to be great immediately with multiple high draft picks and young quarterbacks. Maybe, Huey, I would lean more in the direction of thinking those are also two defensive built ball clubs. Robert Saleh comes from Seattle's scheme in his origins. So maybe he didn't trust that those two defensive coaches would be willing to open up an offense like he wants to have opened up. John, is there any way a trade happens with Russ after June 1st designation where we aren't crippled by bonus money? I don't really see it happening like that, John. I think that the trade's going to happen. They're going to want it to happen this year prior to the June 1st. The reason being is that next year's quarterback situation is not looking great in the draft. If Seattle wants to get their quarterback, they're probably going to want to get in this particular draft one way or another. So they're going to want the picks for this year, not for next year. And that's the only thing with the June 1st deadline at that point. If you're moving on June 1st, then you're not getting any draft capital back for him then until a year down the line. That's the problem. That's my only issue that I have with that then at that point is what deal are we talking about then, the parameters of? Because you're not getting any immediate returns, and they're going to get an immediate season to play out of Russell. Why do wide? Seattle 30th in the NFL spent on O-line in 2020. When Seattle won the Super Bowl, they were first. This is why Russ is upset. Maybe so. Why do wide? I mean, it's probably maybe a big reason why there. The only thing with that on the counter of it, though, why do wide is that your quarterback was making a couple $100,000 when you were spending the most on the offensive line in the NFL. So it's kind of weird when you didn't have to spend on your quarterback, you were able to spend on the offensive line. And I've thought a lot about the offensive line situation. And I think people do need to give it a little more depth of thought on this to a degree, in that there's a lot of ways to build up an offensive line wide to wide. So over the span of 5 years, Seattle spent some of the least amount of money on the offensive line, but they've put some of the most draft capital into the offensive line. I might argue that it's not really about resources or investing enough in the offensive line. It's really about picking better and drafting better and developing better. Some of this goes back to Tom Cable's time. But when you look at Tom Cable, part of what hamstrung Tom Cable, part of what gave him problems and fits that doesn't get talked about at all, is the fact that the NFL started some rule changes, didn't they, in regards to cut blocking, things that affected specifically the zone blocking. And a part of what Cable would do is he'd have guys who go, okay, look, I can't get this guy to blow a guy off the line of scrimmage, but I can teach him to cut block and chop guys down all day long, and that I can build my offensive line around being able to do that. That got removed completely, right as they were in the middle of bringing in these guys that would be a little bit cheaper options. So what they've looked to really do, is bring in cheap offensive linemen, but that were talented, and then have them develop along and be able to then offset that with Russell's salary. I always maintain, and I continue to say, if you're going to pay your quarterback top of the market, if you're going to have him take up nearly 20% of the salary cap, you're going to have other positional groupings that are going to be lighter than pocketbook-wise, that you're spending less money into pocketbook-wise. We can argue about where those places lie, but when you have a defensive-minded coach, it's probably not coming on the defensive side of the ball, i.e. somewhere on the offensive line, somewhere on one of the offensive units, you've got to go cheaper. And where do you want to make that at? Seattle, over the last few years, has decided to make that the offensive line and the running back position, as Russell Wilson's been paid more. He says Pete needs to bend the knee, upgrade the offensive line, get the players Waldron needs to succeed with or without Russ. I understand. I get it. Mary says, I want to see Jamal in better. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I already said it. Randall, part of me wants to blame the front office. If we look at this objectively, it's on Russ. Every player that left has left for one reason. We didn't extend them. Don't recall anyone wanting to just leave. Yeah, I don't either. It's a good point. Brian, Russ has just gone to Hollywood, forgot his roots. There will be life after Russ leaves. Don't get me wrong. If Russ leaves, I wonder if Jay Keeps goes too. Yeah, I agree, man. There's a part of this with, has he gone Hollywood? Is it all about the legacy? And that's become the thing that rules the day with him. We're going to find out. We're going to find out with this really soon. Maybe you're right on that, Brian. Randall, I would think that, yes, I would not be the least bit surprised if we come to find out that if Russ leaves, Jake moves on as well. We'll see on that one. Joey, Brian, 7-9 life. Pete has never been a great coach outside of his run with Wilson. Average on the Jets and Pats. Joey, you conveniently left out all of his time there in college football, winning national championships. And I know everybody goes, well, he built the super teams there. He built the super teams. Yeah, when he arrived, USC was a shell of its former glory. It hadn't come close to winning national titles for 3 decades prior to his rival back in town. So he rebuilt that whole thing, multiple titles. When he came here, the cupboard was bare. Tim Ruskell had, through bad drafts, through bad free agent decision-making, signing guys like TJ Houshmandzadeh to big money, had crippled the cap, crippled the franchise as far as talent on the roster goes. They had to come in and they had to do a sweeping change, Joey, from the jump to get this thing turned back around. I don't know how a coach can luck into 2 titles at two different stages like that. I can't see that. I can't see you not saying that that's not a great coach at that point in time. You can say maybe it's passed him by the game. Maybe his scheme's been outdated. Maybe he's not the coach he once was. But to say like he's been just like an average coach that just had the luckiest draw of a lifetime of coaches, I can't get on board with that one. I don't quite understand that take. Lanny, how you doing, Lanny? Go Treats. Unpopular opinion: the 2020 Seahawks is the worst Seahawks team since 2011. Yeah, I don't buy into it. I don't buy into that at all myself. Nathaniel, just going to play some Madden and listen. Sounds good, Nathaniel. D-Boy, that's what D-Boy's doing too. Cameron Hughes, you don't draft 5 Hall of Famers by accident. Yeah. I don't know that Earl goes into the Hall of Fame at this point. I think folks that think for sure that that's going in, it's a question mark. You look at historically speaking, it's already hard for safeties to get into the Hall of Fame. And then you've got to have a certain set number of interceptions to make it happen. What has he got, like 30 interceptions in his career? It's probably not going to be maybe quite enough to get it done. Gotri says Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright, 2 will be in the Hall of Fame. KJ Wright's not going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's got no chance of being in the Hall of Fame. And Cam Chancellor either, guys. I'm sorry. He's not going to have a chance to be in the Hall of Fame. Not impactful enough from a standpoint of statistically speaking, and then doesn't have the longevity that the voters are going to look for. Orlando Roca. Chancellor and Thomas should get in. Can't say it's going to happen, guys. I'm sorry. There's just maybe with Thomas, maybe, but it's going to take him probably until like until he's one of the 70 years old or whatever, and then he gets in some veteran class or whatever. But unless they open up the amount of players that they're going to allow in every year, he's not going to get in. Safeties have a hard time getting in. And if you don't have the production and longevity to go with both of those 2 aspects, you're just not going to, it's not going to happen. Brian says, question, what's the deal with Carl Smith? I don't know. I've heard a bunch of people make things about it. Some assistant coach that was here once before, now he's come back with his son. Don't know what to make of it, Brian. I've heard some people say it's an indicator that they're looking to placate back to Russ because he might have been a Russ guy. I've heard other people say that he's part of the reason of what held Russ back. I'm not sure. Not sure what to make of that one. Randall says Russ plays mediocre at best for 8 games, utterly fails in the playoffs at home, then tries forcing his way out. You got to let a hoe be a hoe. JS needs to put a deal together and get this done. Tired of it. It has gotten tiresome, and it's gotten tiresome really fast, Randall. It has. It's ramped up, and it's maintained this level of intensity, and it's gotten snippy and just juvenile in the approach of everyone at hand. To me, none of this had to be this out in the open and public. It didn't have to be played out like this in the media. He could have gone behind doors and said, I'd make a trade happen. I'm tired of being here. I can't think that Seattle would have held him in over a barrel. They would have wanted to get the proper compensation back, but I would have thought that they would have said, all right, if you don't want to be here, then fine. You don't want to be here. But the fact is it all had to be public is what's made it just completely, I think, wear people out. Joey, you can argue it, but it's not happening. Pete wants a bland run first offense. Wilson made those big plays in 4th quarters. He did. Defense does win championships, Brett. I agree. Washi, is there any way other than Discord to join your stream? No, there's not right now, Washi. Sorry, bud. Yes, Russ loves him some Russ. Every NFL QB has a huge ego. It's a job requirement. Don't care about his stupid perfume, podcast, book deals. I just know that I want him at quarterback. He's been a top quarterback since day one. He's been a good quarterback since day one. He's not been a top quarterback since day one. It's been a good quarterback. He's a game manager for the first couple of years of his career with a lot of player he was. I think in pointing out Perfume podcasts, book deals, interviews wherever he can get him out, on top of 10,000 other things that he has going at any one time, the wonder and worry comes back to a little bit of the pre-snap stuff, the concentrating on the elements of the game, the important parts. I get a lot of Russ on Instagram with him doing foot drills and showing off throws into soccer nets. I don't get a lot of him doing shots of him doing film study, looking at stuff. Isn't that odd? I don't see a lot of him because it's real sexy to do the shoots out on the field and the sun shooting down. It looks cool. It looks so awesome. Look how hard I'm working. I'm working so hard. Just out here grinding. I want him grinding in an office, staring at film 24/7, working on pre-snap, getting better mastery with that stuff. And that stuff's harder to film and show how awesome you are with it. But I think that's why people point to it a bit. Atheist, should the Seahawks start developing a backup plan at the quarterback position? Is there any quarterback you would like in the draft? So far, of the quarterbacks I've looked at in the draft, and I've got to admit I haven't looked at a lot of the back-end ones, Atheist, but the one I like is Trey Lance. I continue to gravitate back towards him time and time again as a guy who I think would fit to what Coach Carroll would want to do if he moved on from Russell Wilson. But he's the only one right now that jumps out. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, but he's not going to be there as an option. Just not as big on a couple of the other guys. Just not quite as big. Maybe I should be. I'm going to continue to watch some film on those two guys, Wilson and the kid out of Ohio State, because I know that there's a lot of people who do like those guys a lot. There's something that's not clicking with me with those two particular cats. Dev, Juju Smith-Schuster. Could be an interesting guy. What's he going to cost, Dev? That's the thing with him is cost. With Galladay and with Allen Robinson, they're both going to be looking at $15 million plus per year. Could be well over $15 million. What is he going to cost? Where is his value at as far as what people is he looked as an outside guy that can attack? Is he just an inside guy? I don't know, Dev. I've got to know what we're talking as far as cost. I'm interested in looking at him. I'm interested in bringing him in for sure. Huey says, you're high. How many games over the past 5 years has depended on Russ leading some miraculous comeback? It's literally become our identity. It's no longer sustainable, Russ or not. I think Randall's described the last two seasons pretty succinctly, Huey. So, he's pointed last two seasons, you got 8 good games out of Russ. Back his schedule has fallen off, not been the same player, and then doesn't do great in the playoffs. I know this is probably where we disagree, but I don't know if I can always push that all on just, well, he's got to make miracles. Again, the simplistic mind thought to it, it's a little bit more play than just it's this, simply that, or it's just simply that. But I can understand why he's frustrated with it. Brent, still only 3 quarterbacks have won Super Bowls 8 years apart. Broken down Peyton Manning with a great defense, Montana and Brady. Russ is cooked. Yeah, historically speaking, things are not in his favor. He would have to make himself an outlier. He'd have to do something unprecedented in order to get back to that top. It's a strong point, man. Hold on, I'm going to get some more coffee. I will be right back. Okie dokie. Thanks for bearing with me. Rodney, Brandon, I really believe Russ wants to leave. Going into last year, there was no chance. However, now I'm not so sure. Every week, more and more comes out. I'm almost to the point and say, just do it. Yeah, Rodney, I think that what you're saying is a lot like with Randall, and being that you're two people that I know of liked Russell a bit. We've talked, I think, in times about how good Russell's been over time. I think that they're just, you guys are seeing, as I'm seeing to this degree as well, there's things here that are just really annoying and it's tiresome. And you're seeing the indications of, I think, what some people have touched on in the chat here, which is that, are we at a point where one, or if not both of these parties just want this thing to be done? That they're both just finding the way to slide it apart in how they see it. I'm not sure that that's what it is, but there's these when it just keeps going and going, like when Russ fired initially his salvo to say, I'd like to not get hit as much. I'd like to be that. Then it needs to just go quiet, right? Then it goes quiet. You said your piece. Let the front office react. Let them come out with their say on stuff. But then the front office comes back and starts flinging more mud, where the front office comes up and they say, oh, well, he threw this tantrum in the game against the Cardinals before a Thursday night game in Carroll's office and stomped his way out. And then Russell Wilson's camp's got to fire back with, well, here's 4 teams that will be willing to be traded to. It's like, guys, just sit down and talk to each other face to face, as we've learned that they haven't talked for weeks, by the way. Carroll's not talked to Wilson in weeks. It's not a good sign. I think you're feeling it, Rodney. We're all feeling it, man. It is a toughie. Brian Roberts, LaToya Cantrell and Jenny Durkin had words against each other. That was fun to watch. The Seattle mayor going up against the New Orleans mayor. Mayor of Seattle and mayor of New Orleans, Jenny Durkin, said, keep your eyes off Russ. His home is in Seattle. I did like seeing that. I like seeing the mayor go. I don't like watching the one mayor talk. Again, Breeze hasn't even retired yet. Your most celebrated athlete in your city. And what you're pushing him out the door? Now, not the greatest of looks. As well as I think we need to now hammer New Orleans for meddling. Russ is under contract. I bet Sean Payton told Jenny to say that. We need draft compensation back for them doing that. Maxwell, who's your favorite wide receiver to replace Lockett in the draft? Also, I saw a rumor saying we might cut Dunlap. I saw that rumor as well. I'm just going to hope that maybe they're doing that for leverage with Dunlap and trying to get the negotiations back around for an extension to where they can lower down that first-year cap hit. My favorite wide receiver to replace Lockett in the draft, if I'm sticking into realism land and we're picking, let's say, in the second round and where we're picking the second round, I think Rondale Moore is going to go at the end of the first round. I'm not sure on Kadarius Toney. He's the guy who might be there because he might slide for reasons of he doesn't have a fast 40. And if he were to slide, he'd be the guy I would look there as a replacement in the second round, potentially at that point if you've moved off of him. I like Elijah Moore too. Offers a very similar game set with what he does. Those would be 2 guys that I would probably take a look at first and foremost. Jeffrey McDaniel, Earl Thomas flipped Pete Carroll off. I think that is I wanted to leave claim. Jeffrey, they didn't give him a new contract extension, and then they made him play out the final year of his deal. And then he got injured in the final year of his deal without the guaranteed money there, and he thought he just lost a whole bunch of cash and wasn't going to get paid in free agency. So he flipped Carroll off because, as Thomas says, like he had won or something, or Carroll had won in that situation or whatever. Why do why? We are talking about a 12-4 team like they are the Jags. Got to love the offseason. Yeah, I don't think we got a lot of talent on this team. Huey, I say this because he wants to leave. Going to lose the locker room over this. Very well could. Berta Prey says Seahawks are circling the drain at terminal velocity. Maybe. Huey, running backs Montgomery better than any we got, and wide receiver Robinson is a great number 1. Well, Allen Robinson Huey is also a free agent right now. So, and if they were to tag him, I would all but guarantee he would try to force his way out of town. I don't think he's been super happy playing with the poor quarterback play that he has had to go with. I heard last night that he's had the most uncatchable balls, or the lowest catchable ball percentage of any wide receivers over the last 3 years. I don't think he's going to want to try to be forced to remain in that situation. If he does, he would want to be paid. And the Bears don't necessarily have a lot of money to spend. Montgomery was better than any back we got. I don't know about that. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see on that. But it being just better what we got in that, if we're going to say that Rashad Penny just hasn't had enough to show anything, so we can't make a determination on him, and you're saying he's better than Homer and DJ Dallas, well, that's not saying a whole lot, is it? Being better than those guys. Certainly doesn't make you a strength or make you a good running back to say that. Wide. If Seattle is so poor drafting and developing O-line talent, then that would mean they needed to sign proven vets. Seattle's front office is blind to its own flaws, though. Maybe. I get where you're coming from in that approach. I think part of the problem that you see with the offensive line as it is incorporated into free agency is that because linemen have been a problem for the last couple of years. Let's make no mistake about this, wide. Offensive line and blocking is a problem throughout the league. Over the last 10 years, one of the evolutions of the sport we've seen is that the special talents as far as athleticism go, size, speed, all those kind of things, the big guys that are like that, they go to the defensive side of the ball. This is why for a long period of time with Cable, you had us trying to take defensive linemen and put them over on the offensive line side of the ball because you couldn't get the athletes you needed to execute your scheme. Then you add on to this, what we've seen in college is a lot more of a prevalence of the pass-happy approaches and spread formations. Quarterbacks aren't asked to go under center. Linemen aren't asked to run block. Not very often. And when they are running blocking, sometimes it's run blocking out of a look of a pass set to fool a defense rather than a guy just driving off the ball, taking a man, pancaking him down the field and sending him on a ride, if you will. So a little bit of this has been a bit of the transition in the college game where it's a lot harder to pick guys in the college game. But then the other offset of all of this is, as it occurs in free agency, is you don't end up with a lot of prime guys out there in free agency. You don't end up with a lot of guys that you can go and grab. It's one of the more limited positions I would offer most years, year in and year out. You'll get guys that look like they're going to be on there, but that's the positions where guys are most likely to get franchised on because the cost isn't as high and you still keep the club control over them. You can see it this year with a guy like Trent Williams, where maybe he's going to be on the market. Oh, prime left tackle, one of the best pro football focused grade left tackles there is out there. But bam, gets franchised because they can't come to a long-term deal, but they're not going to let him go. Look at last year. Everybody was banging all really you had last year as a right tackle out. They signed Shell. Who was the other prime tackles out there that was available? There wasn't a lot. Who was the prime guards out there in last year's free agent period that was available? Wasn't a lot. Scherf got franchised. Thuney got franchised. That's the other issue here. Is it's one thing to say we want to go spend the money in free agency, but where are the guys to go spend it on? Because again, if you pull this thread down to the back end, I might say why? You end up at that point of the talent coming out of the college ranks has been a lot lesser over the recent 5, 6, 7, 10-year time period. And they're not blocking with a full onset of skills. There are a lot of patty cakers out there, a lot of pass blockers, but not a lot of guys that can run block. And we wanted to be a run block first team, so then it makes it even harder, Extra Long Silvers, how you doing? Huey, if you're going to spend top dollars on a quarterback, it's irresponsible to not invest in a top offensive line. Yeah, I could see that argument on it. I'd say what really it comes down to is that, and this is where I stand on it, you pay the quarterback, because again, it's historically speaking shown, Huey, you can go pay a quarterback, you can build an offensive line around him then and spend your money then on the offensive line in addition to that. But again, you are dealing with finite resources. So the Saints have done a hell of a job for Breeze over the years of making sure he had a great offensive line. Did he always have at the end of his career as many playmakers as he did on the outside? No. Did he ever really the kind of tight end talent that he had once with Jimmy Graham, once Jimmy moved him? No. You look at Aaron Rodgers, who's topped out at the conference championship the last 2 years, but has had a phenomenal offensive line blocking for him. You can also say that when you're paying the quarterback that money and then you add in the offensive line that you don't have the assets to then put into the rest of the team to make you the team you need to be to go win the Super Bowl. Michael, how much does lack of home crowd affect Russ this year? Do we beat the Rams in a full stadium? Well, I would tend to believe that if we have fans in the stadium in a playoff game at home, we don't lose. I think the last home playoff game we actually did lose, though, was to the Rams back in like 2004, I want to say, at home. But it's been, I think, that long since it's happened since then. And I don't think that we would have lost with fans in the stadium. I don't know if it affects Russ. Russ should benefit from a lack of crowd noise. That's one of the reasons he had one of the best seasons he had this year. It's one of the reasons that you had offensive numbers blow up around league-wide, is that there was no crowds in the stadium. Offenses could go into whatever checks, could change whatever plays they wanted to change into, and they could flourish. Everyone could hear the snap count. All the benefits you get from not having a fan in the stadium. But that's what made a little bit of last year an outlier, statistically speaking. But yeah, I do think we win the game if there's fans in the stadium. Michael Carasino. Hey, bro. Hope you're well. I am doing amazing. It has been a long time since I caught a live stream. I'm glad you got in here, my guy. Your thoughts, if it was possible, forget cap hits, would you swap Russ for Deshaun Watson this season? Yeah, I would. You're getting a player 7 years younger. He's got more of an injury history at that point, but I would probably be open to it. But it would only be, Michael, under the caveat. My important caveat is that Russ just is done at that point, Michael. I mean, if Russ wants to stay, I'm going to keep him here. I'm not going to get proactive in moving him. But if he's come to the front office and said, enough's enough, I'm tired, I'm done, I want to go, and that potential is there to be had, yeah, I'd do it. The only thing, Michael, with it is that I think he wants to go to a offensive-minded head coach first and foremost. He's going to want a good organization. He's going to want some talent. You're going to go to the Texans, who have no draft capital, not a lot of cap space as I understand it, and not a lot of talent on that team. I don't know that would really appeal to Russ, and he has to waive his no trade clause to be traded. Maxwell says, what are your thoughts on the new hirings today? I don't know what to make of it, Maxwell. I mean, Carl Smith's an assistant coach bringing on his son. I don't like that you bring on a coach who brings on his son. The son thing just doesn't work for me. I don't like coaches who bring sons on to do it. I think it's not a good look. It's not a good look. A couple of years ago, you had a situation in the Super Bowl where Malcolm Butler had to sit for a Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles, a game in which Tom Brady threw for a Super Bowl record 500 yards passing, and the Eagles on the other side of it sliced and diced that Patriots secondary. And there's a lot of people who have wondered for a long period of time as to why it was that Malcolm Smith was not on that football field that game, because he was sitting down, didn't play at all. I mean, the Patriots were not as deep at corner as they are now. They had Gilmore, but they didn't have a lot else behind Gilmore. They were relying on Malcolm Butler being in there and playing for him. And the backups that came into his place came in there and got shredded. They never went back to him. Nobody could figure out what really happened. And now we've gotten a little bit more now, historically speaking, a little more information on it to find out that supposedly he had gotten in some kind of fight. There had been some other issues at play, but supposedly the thing that really caused this is he had gotten in some kind of fight with Belichick's son, who was on the staff as, I think, a secondary coach or whatever, and that he'd put his hands on him. And it's just, I hear that kind of story and it just comes back again to me just going, it's not smart of coaches to do this, I would think. The nepotism thing is just, it just doesn't sit good from my standpoint of it. I'm not sure. Just not too sure about it. Extra long John Silvers, what do I think about trading Russ? I don't want to do it. I want to keep my franchise Hall of Fame quarterback. Still got a little bit of his prime left. The best potential of our team is with Russell Wilson being the captain and the guy manning the ship here as far as running the offensive show goes. But I'm also not one of those guys that wants to hold on to a player who doesn't want to be here anymore. And if he's at a place where he doesn't want to be here and Seattle's just like, well, the $39 million cap hit hurts too much, I don't care at that point. I'm a guy that goes, okay, just move on. I move on if a guy doesn't want to be here. I'm not trying to force a fit that he doesn't want. I think there's a lot of things built within Coach Carroll's nature that aren't going to change. And I think those things madden Russell a little bit, make him a little bit annoyed. And they probably added up over time. But I think that seems like that's where the situation currently is. Carroll's he's going to have to drop an olive branch here at one point or another, I think, to bring this thing back in the fold. But if we trade him, extra long Don Silvers, we better get the best haul in NFL history of any trade that has ever been made. We better get that. Short of that, I might just tell Russell, you know what? Sit and spin, big guy, because you ain't going nowhere. Chad Robney. Cam might be my favorite Seahawk of all time, of the Pete era, but he's not a Hall of Famer. His greatness can't be measured in stats, and career was too short. We should definitely retire his number, though. I agree wholeheartedly there, Chad. I'm 100% down the line with you on that. I think he's a great player. Didn't have quite the longevity, but yeah, just won't have what you need to kind of get in there. And his importance did go beyond stats. I mean, he was probably, in retrospect, maybe the single most important member of the Legion of Boom and what he provided for them and allowed them to just kind of do what they need. Richard do what he does, Earl do what he does. So you could make that argument, just not quite enough to get into the Hall of Fame. Cameron Hughes says, people forget 2012 Russ got off to a pretty rough start. He did. He was a game manager, just try to not make mistakes. Make a throw or two here a game and get us through. Atheist 4, because I love Trey Lance. Oh, you share my love. You share the great love that I have for him. He jumps off his tape jumps out. Atheist, he really does. The wow factor is there with that guy, and it's not there with me as much as I'd like it to be with Wilson and Fields. I can see the talent in Fields and Wilson. I don't think they're bad quarterbacks. But when you talk about picking in the top 10, I need some wow factor to me. I need you to bring me up out of my chair from time to time. And I find myself just with Wilson and the kid from Ohio State, just Justin Fields, just doing a lot of golf clapping. Oh, very well done. Very well done, sir. Yes, very well. That was a very good throw to the flat. Whereas Trey Lance, I'm up out the chair like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Randall, would you trade Russ for Stafford and Donald? If Rams made the call, would you pull the trigger? No, I'm not. I'm okay with trading within the NFC. I'm not going to make that I will not trade him to a team with the NFC and have him come back and beat us at some point down. I'm not going to also play him twice a year. So I'm willing to trade him within the NFC, but I'm not trading him to an NFC West opponent, especially making the Rams better at that point. No. Dev, I love me some coffee. I could drink coffee all day long, buddy. I love it. Iwi, don't think he wants to leave, just wants Pete to bend the knee and build the team around him. I love it. A little Game of Thrones reference there. I hope you're right, Iwi. I hope you're right. Some of these indications seem like they're starting to go a little bit stiffer, maybe in the other direction of it. And again, if he ends up, Iwi, accomplishing change, remaining in Seattle, and getting Coach Carroll off of his spot on this particular issue that has remained, then I will stand up, Huey, and say that Russell Wilson was successful in doing this. And I'll take a little bit back of what I've said about him as far as being bothered by some of the public aspect of it, because he will have been pushing for change and not to force his way out of town. I feel a little bit like right now he's trying to force his way out of town. But if it's not that, I'll reverse course and stand up and be like, I was wrong. And Wilson was playing some 4D chess while we all thought it was just checkers. Randall says, I like Lance too. I wonder why he went to such a small school. I don't know the backstory on him. I'm not sure on it either there, Randall. I'm not sure on either with him. I've not dived deep into it just because I'm just starting to start to really look at the quarterbacks a lot more. I try to with the prospects, look at guys first and foremost that'll be within Seattle's targeting, who I think are going to be realistic guys we could be taking a look at. And I hadn't done anything really with quarterbacks too much, but I will be looking deeper into them. I'll tell you that more and more with each day. I'm looking more into these quarterbacks. We're looking at Kellen Mond last night, and I'll be diving back into Lance too. Atheist 4 because, is it possible that Seattle asked Wilson to take a pay cut so he leaked 4 teams to the media that he would go to? No, I don't think so, Atheist. Seattle could, if they wanted to, convert his base salary this year into bonus, save $10 million off the top without having to ask him to take a pay cut. He gets all his money, it converts to bonus, you get some savings. They could do that without his permission. It's built within the framework of the contract. I think that more what happened there was that Seattle leaked the story about him throwing a tantrum mid-season in the coach's office and stomping his way out, an attempt by the Seahawks front office to make him look a little bit bad as he's been throwing shade at them throughout the whole offseason. So Russell came back with his tit for tat, and his tat was that he has 4 teams that he'd be willing to be traded to. That's part of the thing I speak to with this atheist, where it's this sort of juvenile approach that both parties have taken towards finding some resolution here. Randall says, Russ is my favorite player of all time. Been an NFL fan for over 30 years. I didn't want this crap. I think he's put himself over the team. Can't have that from a quarterback. Yeah, it's the thing people lose in this a little bit too, Randall, with him piping up as much as he did. There's a line between moving off from leader to prima donna. You know, and the quarterbacks I will always maintain have got to be a little bit of those milquetoast, boring, kind of yes men within the organization. You need them to have the coaches back at every turn because it's so easy for there to be a mutiny on the ship and for locker rooms to fracture and cliques to develop. And when you get a quarterback who starts to throw certain players under the bus a little bit, I've been hit too much. Oh, hey, I'm your offensive lineman. I ain't loving hearing that. What are you trying to do here, Russ? What are you trying to do, man? So I don't like it either, Randall. I'm in the same boat with it. Brent McKinney, thank you for the $5 donation, sir. Kind sir, I salute you and appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. And as Brian said, do please remember, smash on that like button if you happen to be listening on in. It does help me out tremendously, and I do appreciate it so much. Thank you, Brent. You're awesome. Randall says, we heard KJ come out in favor of Russ. I think the longer it goes, the more likely we'll start hearing from other guys. Yeah, I think too, it's KJ's thinking about as well as, and he's not going to disparage Russ as he's still trying to get paid by the team to come back to them. So he's going to keep everything probably good with that, even if he may have thought or felt a different way. I would expect him to say that. He's, everybody's got to play the public relations game here who's at play, knowing the situation at hand. But I would guarantee you if Russ were to move on, there would be a lot more stories that have been tampered down. We know a lot about the Seahawks front office and Coach Carroll, and that they protect players above all else. There's stories that happen through the years that we will never have heard out. I can't wait for the book to be written 20 years down the line. And I think it's going to blow a lot of people's tops off when they hear about a lot of the things that were sort of held under wraps and kept quiet throughout this time period. Acrocanthoruses. Jets get us a next level offensive line player. I want that. The Jets pick gets us in the next level. They would. If you got the Jets pick, you could get, if you wanted, Penny Sewell. Rashaad Slater would be another guy that would be a very interesting pick. That might be a little high to go grab him. I think you can trade back and get that guy. There is a little bit of talk right now with Penny Sewell, too, about him sliding a little bit in the draft. I don't know what to make of it, but he went from a guy who's consensus top 3 kind of player to a guy that might fall even into the teens, which would be interesting to see. I think past Sewell and Slater, I would have a hard time going for any of the other offensive linemen in like the top 10, top 15. I think that they're more back-end first-round guys at that point in time. So I would probably stick with just those 2 particular guys. But you're right, Acro, those are 2 guys who could certainly help you out quite a bit. Yui says, Russ, win totals and pass numbers speak for themselves. He's a top quarterback this decade. He's not the best quarterback in the NFL, but he doesn't make miracles. We don't even win those measly 8 games he's only good for. Nathaniel, do you think Cam played a full career? He would have been a Hall of Famer. Well, Nathaniel, you're asking me to now believe that the sports writers of America are going to be able to operate with enough intelligence to see a player who would have been a guy important to the defense and who went beyond stats, because so much of what those voters do, I think, comes back to stats, and they were, it's the lazy approach to voting, essentially. It's just, what did he do in his career? And I think with Cam, even in his best case scenario, he would have retired even after a long career with probably only like 20 interceptions. Maybe would have broken 1,000 tackles, and that would have been enough to get him into the spot. But the thing that gets it to me for this, on this point in regards, Nathaniel, is just that it's so hard for safeties to get into the Hall of Fame. There's so few of them throughout time period. They might be the position where it's the hardest to get in, specifically for these reasons, where statistically it's doesn't always bear out your impact on the football field. But those guys that get in, the Palomalos or the Ed Reeds recently, are usually the big stat guys. Now we did see I forget his name, but the Tampa Bay safety got in, hard hitting safety, a little bit like what Cam was. So, if he could have gotten in, maybe he could have gotten in, but I think it would have been a hard uphill battle for him, Nathaniel. I don't think it would have been as straightforward as, he'll get right in. Michael Parker says, how many LOB make the Hall of Fame? Bobby and Sherman? That's going to be it, Michael. That's going to be it. I think Earl needed, at least one more year of upper-level play to get himself in. And I think that's going to be all we're going to see, though, of anybody else that gotten in. KG's not getting in. Michael Bennett's not getting in. Avrill's definitely not getting in, unfortunately. Just not enough there. Yui, who's been closer to getting to the Super Bowl in the last 5 years? Us or the Packers and the Saints? Answer is Saints and Packers. Both invested in their offensive line, and Seattle had done that. We wouldn't be here. So again, this is the place where I think we disagree, Yui. I know you and me have got at some spots we agree and some spots we disagree with. Where I want to go for is Super Bowls. That's to me the mark. Can I go win a Super Bowl? That's the way I've looked at through that lens. So when I provided you the stat of the 20 years and no quarterback making 14.5%, I look at it all times through how can we get back to the Super Bowl? Being a consistent winner, getting to the playoffs, getting a game or two in the playoffs, and then losing doesn't really bring me a whole lot of satisfaction as a fan. I'll be entertained. I'll have fun with the season, but that's not what I'm shooting for. That's not what I want my front office to be shooting for. I don't want my front office to shoot for replicating what the Packers and Saints have done for the last 5 years. Aaron Rodgers has never gone back to a Super Bowl, Yui, the second he started getting paid. Never got back to a Super Bowl. Drew Brees had that team over a can year in and year out and made them kick the can down the curb and pay for tomorrow and everything else, and restricted the roster building. Did it restrict the roster building to the point they couldn't get to the conference championship? No. They were able to get to there, but that was their top end. We're seeing our particular top end being one and done. Our top end's a little different than their top end, but at the end of the day, nobody's getting to Super Bowls, right? And that's what this is really about at the end of the day. And that's really what my point with you, Yui, continues to be. What's up, Jays? Good to have you back on in here. Rodney, 2K is right. 2K is right. They had plenty of chances and drafted a bunch of bums for their O-line since 2015. Look it up. Yep, they've not done good with drafting offensive linemen. I don't disagree with anybody there. Their picking and their development, I think their development's come along a little bit further with Solari than it was with Cable. I think their picking has been a little bit unsound at times, that's for sure. But it was really about the initial point on it, Rod, that Seattle doesn't put any resources in the offensive line. There's no resources put. They put resources, they just haven't done a good job of it. I think there's a keen difference between those 2 points. The GOAT 209, I think he named 4 teams he can get offensive line, not the coaches, tight ends that he wants. I got to reread that. I'm sorry. I think I read that wrong. I think he named 4 teams. Oh, sorry. I read that wrong. Sorry, GOAT. I think he named 4 teams so he can get offensive line, not the coaches, tight ends that he wants. Maybe. So you're saying he named the 4 teams to try to push the offensive line thing, to just try to get the change happening is what you're saying, Go? John Vandermolen. How you doing, John? I think improving the running game is the best way to help Russ. I don't think Russ is the kind of quarterback that can dominate purely as a passer. That said, he's a special talent and an improviser. Fantastic comment, John. Welcome on the chat. You absolutely nailed it, knocked it out of the park with that one, man. I think I agree in totality with it. Because I love comments like this because you unpack quite a bit in just a couple of sentences. And I think the big part of unpacking it here is that do we think can Russell really operate in one of these pass-heavy Patrick Mahomes types attacks? And if the answer is no, then does that necessarily have to mean that he isn't special or that he can't dominate in other ways? He can't dominate in efficiency. He can't dominate in certain other aspects. It's just not going to look like Mahomes. It'll just look a little bit different. And I think he can, John. I think he can, to your point. He can dominate other ways. It doesn't have to be as a volume passer. I think that's where sometimes we get into some of that black and white angle of the argument, and it's a little bit more of a shade of gray answer. Great comment, though. Paul Manning, looking at plays from 2020, Wilson had some amazing plays that only a few can make. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. He makes plays during the course of a game that I think no quarterback can make at times. Not even a Mahomes, not even a Rodgers. There's just certain things he can do where he's got that little bit of that magic to him. It happens a little bit less often than it did early on in his career because a lot of that's built around the ability to scramble and the ability to move around, and I don't think that Russell moves with the same sort of spriteness that he once did, but still can make some awesome plays. John Vandermolen says, do you like us drafting a thumper at running back? Have you heard of Ramondre Stevenson? Well, I have not heard of Ramondre Stevenson, John, but what I do is when I get one of you guys that suggests a name for me, I go and do some scouting on him. So while I don't have an answer for you right now at the moment, I will work to take a look at him and add him to my list. I've gotten through some of the top-end running backs so far. And I definitely like Javonte Williams quite a bit. I love me, of course, Najee Harris. I think he's become a little bit more of a divisive prospect, frankly. Those are my top 2 guys that I really, really like quite a bit. When you look at some of the other running backs that are out there, there's some interesting guys in this draft. They're unusual. All of them seem to have kind of their one thing that they do that's kind of just a little bit unique to them. A lot of slasher vision guys, a lot of guys that cut past the grain, looking for the open hole. So we probably will need to find that thumper like you're talking about. If you're not getting it in the first Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, second round area, you're probably going to be getting it into that 5th, 6th, 7th round area, which is where I'm guessing this Ramondre Moore, boy, it's going to be tough having to say that name all the time, would probably end up going at that point. So I'll take a look at him. I love the suggestion, though. Thank you. John Lynch, that's who it was, Cameron. You know me, every stream, there's got to be like one name I just cannot put my finger on. Levi, how you doing, Levi? I think this upcoming season will be a boiling point for Russ. If they don't win a Super Bowl or even get close to the Super Bowl, he will request a trade. Levi, it's 100%. 100%. I mean, shoot, he might be at that point this offseason for all we know. It certainly seems to go closer and closer to there. But yeah, I will guarantee you, if they don't get done the things that he's asking to get done, if he takes a ton of hits next season, if he doesn't have good playmakers on the outside, if the offense is, again, boring, simplistic, run-heavy, run on first down, no up-tempo, then Russell is going to want to get out of here, with an eject button at the end of the year, I would guess. Huey says it is juvenile, but don't forget the Seahawks released at the beginning of the week that they weren't trading Russ, but if they did, the asking price starts at 3 first-round picks. And it's both sides on it for me, Huey. So it's not just Russ being juvenile here. It's both sides are being juvenile. Both sides are playing kind of the silly game here rather than doing what should be done. As if this is professional and we're acting like adults, then all of this stuff, all these talks can happen behind closed doors. We can come to whatever resolution is going to need to become driven at behind closed doors. If it's, we're not willing to build around you, Russell, and you're going to have to eat that and deal with that. And he says, I'm not willing to eat that and deal with that. And then they say, okay, that's fine. We'll move on from you. But now you need to eat $30 million of your signing bonus or give us back $15 million of your signing bonus so that we can make your cap hit more equitable to moving on from you. Okay, fine, I'll do that. Or no, I'm not willing to do that. And then they say, okay, well, we'll see you at training camp. That all happens behind closed doors. That gets solved. It's probably a pretty quick conversation, especially if there still is active open disagreement. And you don't need to get all of this public mess, all of this shading, all of this back and forth. This stuff accomplishes, I would argue, little to nothing. Little to nothing, all of this stuff that's happened. It's not going to raise Russell Wilson's image to a great spot. It's not going to make him more beloved in Seattle. It's not going to get him, I don't think, the resolution. I could end up being proven wrong by this, but I don't think in the way that he's going about this is going to get the resolution that he's trying to get or that he purports to wanting to get. Brian Myers, you were speaking to him. Sorry. Huey says Cam Chancellor is a Hall of Famer, and I believe the committee will see that eventually. You could be right on the veteran committee aspect of it, because certainly there's some veteran committee guys that get on. Many times they've had to have died at that point. So it kind of sucks because they don't get to come it's like posthumously. They give them the Hall of Fame jacket. You sure would like to see it while they're alive with it. But he does it, man. He falls really short on it, Huey. I mean, they would really have to look beyond numbers. They would really have to look beyond the need for longevity with it to get him in. And I would love to see it if they did. Don't get me wrong. I ain't going to decry if Cam gets in. If Bam Bam gets in, I'll be up there applauding along with everybody else. But I can't see it happening. Tobias. Hello, Tobias. Good to see you, brother. How you doing over there in Europe? Tobias, is this the 2021 free agency waiting room? Great job as always, Brandon. It is indeed, man. It is indeed. I tell you what, I wish we were two free agency because then we could be talking about other players and fits and team building and hot stove talk. And instead, Tobias, we're definitely have to do a lot of Russ talk. And considering this awful, horrible possibility, I don't think even the people that are pro at this point trading Russ really want to see play out. Randall says, to John's earlier point, I think the team knows he needs a strong running game. Does Russ think that? I'm not so sure on that, Randall. I'm not so sure on that. When he's saying he wants to score 24 points in the first half of football games, you kind of hard to do that if you're running the football or if you're committed to running the football. I think Russell's hard. I think he thinks he can run a Mahomes offense, and I think he can run it as well, if not better. And he may very well be right with that. He may very well be proven true. But I think that is what he wants. I've not seen any indicator about really him loving running the ball as much as they do. The GOAT 209, is Jimmy Graham a Hall of Famer? No. Jimmy's going to come from a little bit of, this is what affected running backs right around the Sean Alexander timeframe, 2005, 6, 7-ish area, where you have theoretically the stats that could get you into the Hall of Fame, but then you're into an era where there's, passing attacks have opened up, the tight end positions open up, and so you have a lot of players out there now also pushing up a lot of really good production. I think with Jimmy, he's going to be on the outside looking in with that. I mean, you look at his last 6 years of his career, he's really not put up any of the great seasons of what he was doing with the Saints in his heyday. So I think he falls short as well on that. There's too many other tight ends that'll create a logjam there, I think, where he won't get through. You've got your Antonio Gate types. I'm trying to think through some of the names. The Vernon Davis types. I mean, is Vernon Davis a Hall of Famer? Hard to see that, right? And he's got to have probably stats that are very near what Jimmy Graham's put off, if not better in totality. Michael Parker's got a great question. He says, what do you think of analytics? I think it's hard to factor in the values on keeping or losing momentum in individual matchups. I think with analytics, you've got to look at how they've affected other sports first and foremost, and then really start to unpack it. And when you look at analytics and how it's affected baseball, how it's affected basketball, and the way it's changed those sports, I mean, just completely, and how you roster build and how you attack offensively, defend, all that stuff, it's got huge importance in general, and it should not be denied that importance. You're removing a lot of human error when you're bringing in analytics. You're removing a lot of the gut instinct and confirmation bias and things that can make it hard for folks to evaluate properly. So it has huge value. The other side of this is part of what you point to with Michael is that football is such a different breed of sport than baseball and basketball. Everything in baseball and basketball is so linear and down the thing. A happens to B happens to C happens. Player A passes to B, player B shoots. Player A gets credit for the good pass. Player B gets credit for the good shot. Player C, being the defender, was not able to get a hand up in the defender's face, so it was a poor defensive effort. Things are very straightforward analytically. Baseball the same way. Baseball even more exact because you're playing to where guys hit a baseball. He tends to hit the ball right here within about a 5-foot span. And then lining him up or doing a shift in order to take advantage of a guy being a pull hitter who just can't hit it the other way. And analytics have shown that. Football's not going to be like that. You don't know what an individual player's responsibility is pre-snap. You're not looking at the playbook and understanding what he's supposed to do. And sometimes you're going to feign things and make things look a certain way on the football field and then go do something else. You might fake a bad block like you would in the screen game and let a defender run by you. Now that's easy for Pro Football Focus to see. But it's, again, an indication where he didn't let the block go by. That's built within the design of the play. I will say this. It's getting more and more and more and more refined, the pro football stuff, the analytical stuff. It started out rough, and it's getting better and better and better, and I think it will continue to refine over time. It will continue to get better. You'll be able to take a lot more of the statistical data and really be able to extrapolate off of it as they get it more refined. Will it ever be perfect, or is probably close to what basketball and baseball will be able to do in using that as a baseline there? No. But absolutely, it should be used as a weighted tool. It should be there along with your eye check. It should be, I say it, if my ideal scenario, I'm sort of taking statistics and analytics and I'm making a part of what I'm looking at, and then making the eye test and what I'm looking at on film and the eye in the sky, so to speak, is my other half of it, and I'm comboing them up. You don't always succeed at getting that perfect melding between the two. But I think that's where you try to shoot for on the football field so that you're getting as close as you can on point. Gotree, it says Jimmy Graham is in the same caliber as Greg Olsen. I mean, if one is in, then both should be in. Well, let's take a look at these two careers, shall we? Because I think maybe you guys are right. Maybe Jimmy Graham's a lot better than I thought, statistically speaking. But let's take a look. I thought Greg Olsen outperformed him. But I'm not 100% sure Greg Olsen gets in. So, you've got 199 career games from Greg Olsen. And looks like we got 169 games from Jimmy Graham. So he's played a little bit less games. Jimmy's got basically 700 receptions and 8,000 yards. And Greg Olsen has 750 receptions and 8,000 yards. So, but I'm not so certain that Greg Olsen's a Hall of Famer either. I mean, I can see there's longevity. Is there true greatness throughout that time period? I don't know on that. And there's going to be a lot of tight ends, I think, like these guys on the bench. So that's a great comparison, Gotree. It's between the two. Those guys had very similar careers, statistically speaking. Surprised. I thought Olsen had much more than Jimmy. But with both of them, 700 catches, both of them are going to fall beneath the 1,000 catch mark, which tends to be a benchmark for pass catchers to get into the Hall of Fame normally, modern day pass catchers at least. I think both of them will fall short of that. Both of them will fall short of 10,000 yards. I didn't check on touchdown catches, but I don't think either can get in. I don't think so. We got some strong debate about Jimmy Graham. Randall says, one thing I haven't thought about on the 4 teams his agent said they'd accept a trade to is what type of offense do they run? Is it the coach scheme or is it about the city? Why those teams? I don't think he is as intricately worried about the scheme because they're so varied in what they do. You get the gimmicky Chicago stuff in there. You've got the Greg McCarthy, West Coast kind of background at another place. You've got the Sean Payton, I don't know what you call it, offense, which is just like a lot of everything. It's all over the board. I tend to think that he probably just started a really simplistic state of who's got an offensive-minded head coach that's going to build a passing attack around me and let me run what I want to run offensively speaking. I think he just literally kind of kept it pretty simple to that. Paul says, did the offensive coaches put in new plays at the second part of the season that affected the quarterback and offensive performance? A little bit. What they implemented in was more of the short passing attack when they went to it and less of going down the field and attacking deep down the field. But when they went to the short passing attack, they went almost to an extreme degree. I mean, it was like 4 or 5 yards per attempt type passes off of what Russell Wilson normally sits at, which is about 8 yards per throw, historically speaking. So they embraced this short passing attack, but then they didn't have any other. It went from everything being deep to now everything being short. Like they couldn't kind of integrate both at the same time. It had to be all of one or all of the other, which was very odd to see and frustrating as hell. Randall says if Russell stays in 21 and has a mediocre year, more of the last 8 games than the first 8 of 2020, would stock go down or the struggles would be more about Pete and our scheme? I think a coach team will think they can fix it. Hard to say on that one, Randall. Hard to say. I think that there would probably be a coach out there that would think they could fix it because they know Pete Carroll's a defensive-minded coach, and they'll think, I know offenses. Pete doesn't know offenses. Let me bring this guy over. As you've heard Brock Heward speak to, sometimes you get these quarterbacks that don't know what they don't know. Don't know that they have all this knowledge that they could bring in and into play in the football field and get that much better and that much smarter as they're playing. So I think an offensive coach would look at Russell Wilson like that, even if that was the case. Maybe you're not getting into the 3 first-round pick phase. I think a mediocre year probably costs you one of those first-round picks in value. But then Russell Wilson, same age of Matt Stafford after that point, even off a mediocre year, I'd still think that he could get at least what Stafford got in trade from the Rams. Levi, Pete is too stubborn to change, so Russ, I believe, will not end his career in Seattle. I agree, Levi. That's my current prognostication as well. Zorn76, Russell Wilson's complaint that Pete and his son's answer to no one was interesting. It was interesting. Something we've long thought was the case here at this channel. And again, another shot across Carroll's bow, Zorn. But, I think Russell Wilson's got a point in this respect. I think sons and coaches and all that stuff. And the football should be, it's so competitive. Coaches are so competitive. You should be finding the best candidate, not the one that you're related to by blood. Coach Rietz, do you think Pete is too old to coach? He's like the 4th or 5th oldest coach in NFL history to coach and the oldest active coach. Yes. Yeah. Coach Rietz, my beginning of this offseason laid with firing coach, moving on from coach, bringing in a dynamic, mastermind, offensive-minded coach. That was where I wanted to begin this offseason. It's not going to happen. Knew it wasn't going to happen. Just what I would have liked to do if I was King Brandon sitting atop my throne, dictating to Schneider and Carroll what was what. I am not trying to be an ageist. There are men who are 70 years old who can go out and do a great many things, who can be very productive in society, who can be leaders of men. But in my life's history and watching men like this that get to this age, the thing that's very apparent and key to me is you lose a step or two. You're not as quick. I know at my age right now, my brain ain't firing at the same capacity as firing in my early 30s. Father Time is undefeated. And so when you talk about a guy in his 70s and knowing that I've dealt with a lot of guys in his 70s, even when they're on the ball, even when they're with it and responsive and, he's a young 70s, young 70. Yeah, but you're still 70. You should be retiring and moving on by that point. You had a good run of it. You had a good 45, 50-year run. You did well. Be happy with that. Move on. Know when it is time to gracefully let the next generation come in. We all have our day. We all have our youth in the sun. We all have our moment out there to go out and play. We also have to know when to kind of move on and take the stages of life with that sense of kind of grace. And I think that you sometimes hold on to things, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But it doesn't always make it the right way to go either. Randall, the Russ drama has put a damper on the free agency buildup for me. So much in flux. Me too. Hard to predict what's going to happen, where we're going to be sitting, what we're dealing with, if it's just kicking a year down the road and essentially we're going to be in full rebuild, or if we truly are going to be a team that can compete in the next year. It's a wild variance right now, Randall, and it makes it impossible to think about anything with how this is going to go, especially because we're not getting any resolution on the situation. It just sort of sits there and stirs. Jeremy says Russ isn't going anywhere. $39 million in dead money sets the team back a few seasons. Pete's got 3 to 4 years left. He doesn't want a rebuild. A couple people have come in the chat that have spoke to this, Jeremy, and I'm not trying to repeat myself to a degree on it, but let me just cover a couple quick things with you, okay? If Russell Wilson wants out of town badly, if he's like, get me out of town, I'm done with this situation, I don't want your new coordinator, and I don't want you, Carroll, get me out of town. Front office then says to them, hey, you just signed a new deal. We're not eating $39 million in cap hit to move off from you. Russell Wilson then says, fine, I'll give you back $20 million of signing bonus. Well, why is that an impossibility, Jeremy, of happening? Why is that so incredibly like, there's no way he would give back $20 million? Well, if he's getting signed to a new deal with the new team he goes to, if they're just going to tear up his deal and then sign him to a new one and he gets the $20 million right back in bonus money he wasn't going to currently receive on the current contract, why is that not within the bounds of reason? You know, is it a likelihood? No, but it doesn't mean like he's just not going anywhere. There's just no way. Well, there's a way. Is it likely to happen? No, it's not likely, but there's a way. I don't like it, but there's a way. The other thing with this too, Jeremy, is what if a team's willing to give you so much in draft capital that it's worth eating the $39 million? What if a team like Chicago comes to you and they go, look, you got $39 million you're going to have to hit. We got it. We get it. We understand. We need to now compensate you more in draft capital than we would have to if this was just a deal across the board. We were just taking on a Russell Wilson and the dead money wasn't even a factor. Here's some extra picks to alleviate those dead money concerns. If Coach Carroll's sitting on 7 high draft choices coming off a Wilson trade, and knowing his ego and knowing his pride and determination and how he does it and believing in his own philosophy, you don't think there's a part of Coach Carroll that would think, I could do this again? I could do this again. I'm much further along than we were when I walked in the door in 2009. We're much further along from a talent standpoint, and I got the stack of picks I'm looking at. In a year from now, I'm going to have all that money cleared off the books then, Jeremy, because that's the other thing is all the money's gone then. You ate it this year. It's gone basically by next year. We don't think Coach Carroll and all of his hubris might look at that and go, I can get this back in quick. Especially if he thinks he's going to be here for another 4 or 5 years. He signed a 5-year extension. Zorn76 says Pete's philosophy is fine, but his non-disguise approach needs to end. It will end this year, at least on the offensive side of the ball. It will end the offensive side of the ball. Defensive, I can't. I don't know that he's going to learn that, Zorn, this offseason, how to disguise stuff on the defensive side of the ball. But yes, offensively speaking, they're going to that one of the hallmarks of this new scheme is its ability to make it very hard on defenses to determine pre-snap what the hell is going on, where play is going to go. So they should be a lot better about that. A lot better. Yui says, if only Super Bowls matter and top paid quarterback is athemia to that, then you should be in favor of Russ being jettisoned and team rebuild around a cheap quarterback. Advocating for anything else is disingenuous. Okay. You love coming at me, Yui, don't you? I love that about you, my guy. So yeah, it's not because something's not been done historically speaks to the fact that it's not likely to have happened. Does it mean that I don't think that there can be an outlier in given NFL history? Sure, there can be an outlier. That's what Tom Brady is. Do I believe Russell Wilson's the outlier? I'm not so sure about that. Part of what I've advocated for in addition to this, Yui, is to ask him to my cat's running around, ask him to take a little bit of a discount, take a little bit less money, get below that 20%. That'd be another way to do this too, Yui, right? You wouldn't have to move on from him, just ask Russ to take a little bit less. That might be another route I'd go. Keep him and get him below that percentage we talked about, right? But that's not even an option on the table, is it? It's got to be all his way or no way at this moment. What's up, D-Mark? We're going to run some Fort later, D? I'm feeling some Fort, man. Cameron, if Vernon Davis is a Hall of Famer, his daddy Cam is a Hall of Famer. I don't think Vernon's it. I don't think Vernon, I don't think Greg, and I don't think Jimmy are Hall of Famers because I think of the logjam issue I was talking about with those running backs. There's a lot of running backs from the mid-2000s, like your Sean Alexander types, who can't get into the Hall of Fame, and they can't because there's a lot of running backs around them that had similar productivity levels. And so it's sort of like rather than a rising tide raises all boats, in this case, a rising tide sort of lowers all boats beneath the water. I don't know that I believe those guys are going to put enough production into play to get into the Hall of Fame. Byron Schmidt, I don't see what you see in Penny. He looks uncoordinated, and that was before his ACL tear. Bust in my eyes. So I brought this up earlier. I'll bring it up now again here. Just take a look at some of these stats, Byron Schmidt, of Penny coming out. Highest graded running back, second highest graded running back coming out by Pro Football Focus, 88.3. Saquon Barkley picked in the top 5, was 57 out of 58 as far as when contacted at or behind the line of scrimmage. He averaged 0.45, basically 0.5 yards a carry when he got hit by the line of scrimmage, whereas Rashad Penny in college averaged 3.32 yards per carry. Number 1 of all the backs coming out in that particular draft. When we look at what he's done as a pro, right around the time of 2019 when he had his ACL tear, and I think he was still coming back from his ACL tear last year, Byron, he averaged 8.2 yards per carry on outside runs and 7 yards per carry off tackle, while also averaging 11.4 yards per yak. That was just his yak. That wasn't yards per, but his yak in 2019. You got to get him in space and let him work. So in my opinion, Byron, a lot of this has had to do with how he's been not utilized correctly. He's an outside guy. Utilize him on the outside edges. Here are the games in which Rashad Penny's had 10 carries or more because he couldn't get on the field to get those 10 carries. They wanted their Chris Carson. They wanted their Marshawn Lynch running back. So in the times he got 10 carries or more, had one game, not so good, 10 carries, 30 yards. Here's another one where it's 12 carries, 108 yards. Oh, here's another one, 10 carries, 62 yards. That's pretty good. 14 carries, 129 yards. That's pretty good. 15 carries, 74 yards. That's all right. Did get 2 touchdowns in that game and also caught 4 passes for 33 yards in that game. You look at in totality in those games where you've given him 10 carries or more, he's got 61 carries in total, 403 yards. That's 6.61 yards per carry. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. That'll work on my team. That'll work on my team. So why am I so high on him? Because when I look at stuff like that, I see potential. When I look at this, and in this career that everyone tells me is a bust right now, is this big bust. He's averaging 5 yards a carry. You know, to my eyes, you take out the injury aspect, and look, he had no injuries in college. He had injuries. He's had two major injuries in the pros. Does that make them freaky? Does that make him injury prone? I don't know. Well, that remains to be seen. Maybe he is injury prone. But as far as the potential for him to be a productive back in this league, I'm not expecting a superstar, but to be a very good, productive back, an explosive back in this league, I see a lot of statistical proof that falls in line with what I've seen on film with him, where he's not utilized to the outside. You have him hammering up in the middle time and time again, and even that, despite the fact that he hammers up in the middle time and time again, you have games like the Steelers where he's still able to bust off a 50-yarder on read option, or the Eagles in 2009, a 50-yarder off of read option. He's not a read option running back, really, but he's making it work in those situations. So I get why some folks are down on a Byron, but I still do see there's a lot of potential to me. A lot of potential there to me. Or at least some potential there to where I'm not willing to give up on him. Arzos, what do you think about Deshaun Shedd coming back as a defensive back coach? I mean, he's a guy that was, a skill challenge and that he didn't have a lot of those, great, like super fast, super quick guy. He was a long, taller guy to a degree. He could play a couple different positions. So you'd think he was a pretty heady guy to be able to do that. And a guy, because he didn't have necessarily the physical talents, had to rely a lot more on his brain in order to operate in the scheme and do okay. He was never a sensational player, kind of an overachiever probably in a lot of respects, but hard to say how he'll be as a coach necessarily. Those are usually the ingredients for a good coach, is the guys that are the overachiever types that really had to get out every last drop that their physical traits had to give. They do tend to be pretty good coaches. Coachery, it says, is Pete Carroll a Hall of Famer? Yeah, I think he will go into the Hall of Fame. If Tony Dungy is going to go into the Hall of Fame, then Coach Carroll's going to go. Dungy got to 1 Super Bowl, and he's going to the Hall of Fame. Coach Carroll, I think, has had a pretty similar career. Cameron, Byron, before the injury, he was lighting it up as a receiving back and as a 1-2 punch with Carson. Yep, I agree on that. Byron Robinson, I can't wait to see the new pitcher for the Mariners. I'm just starting to kind of pick up watching the Mariners again here, so I got to get along with them. I haven't done much watching on the Mariners. Arzos, I saw somewhere that if we trade Russ to the Bears, we could get Khalil Mack. I wouldn't be opposed to that Khalil and 3 firsts. Wouldn't that be something? That'd be a pretty good haul. I think that'd be a fair haul if we're talking about a trade having to happen. Brian, what's your thoughts on the new pitcher of the Mariners? I don't know, man. I've not been following a lot. The Big Maple we re-signed? Which pitcher are you talking about? John says, what position has an easier time contributing as a rookie, left guard or center? Probably left guard, John, though it is close because left guard's taking on the best pass rusher on the defensive tackle position, which is going to make it a little bit tougher. But a center is going to have to probably handle so much more as far as line calls and having a little bit more of leadership of the line, which I would think would be harder to do coming in as a rookie. So probably left guard would be where I would go with it. But they're both close in that they're both going to be, next to left tackle. These are the next two behind left tackle is probably the two challenging positions. I think it's easier to get a guy in a right tackle or at right guard than it is at these other 3 positions. Right guard being you usually have some help from the center and you're blocking a 1-tech versus a 3-tech, and then the right tackle, usually you're not taking on the prime blindside rusher most of the time. John, what about drafting a second-tier tackle and letting him season at left guard to eventually replace Dwayne Brown in time? Thinking about Walker Little, Liam Eichenberg, Dylan Radins, or Deontay Smith. We'll go through each of those. Walker Little would be a guy that's going to appeal to Seattle John, but he's going to probably go at the top of the first round. Dylan Radins, let me check my notes on him. Yeah, I got Dylan is going late first too. So Dylan's going to be a late first. So those 2 guys are definitely off the board. Deontay Smith, so maybe he'll be there. Handles well outside, moves equally well, finds a way to get the job done even at competition level. Okay. So I like Deontay Smith. I think of the guys you mentioned there, probably Deontay Smith would be the top guy to go and do that with, and he would be there in the mid-second round. Probably Liam Eichenberg will probably be there as well. You could theoretically do that same thing with him as well. You can kick him into guard too. I think Smith's would be a little bit better in that. I feel like Liam, what he really needs to do is just move over to right tackle and be over there. He's just not a blindside guy. He doesn't have enough athleticism to hold up over there on the left side. Just flip him over the right and call it a day. But Walker Little, he's on the rise right now. His name's coming up. Part of in trying to assess those Stanford guys, they've had some somewhat poor quarterback play recently. It's made it hard, but he's on the rise. Radin's on the rise. I like Deontay Smith's game. It's a little bit with him, John. It's a question of competition. So he didn't play against the best of the best. He's a big guy. It's not always the most technical. It sort of just gets the job done by any means necessary, so to speak. One of those kind of players, but he's a big dude. And I think he would probably hold up relatively well over there at left guard. You're on the right track with thinking that you can take a left. It's a little easier taking those left tackles and moving them into left guard for the most part. It's a little bit of what I want to be hesitant against, though, John, because there are some good guards in this draft that you could just pick for the position they play, and they would be good in that position. We've had a little bit of a mixed to poor results recently of taking guys like Justin Britt and moving him from right tackle to right guard to center, and Jermaine Ifedi from right guard to right tackle. Bouncing these guys all around, or Posick, where you've had first couple of years he's over at left guard and right guard, and then you finally get him to center. Just get the guy into the proper position he should play right from the jump and let him mature at that position to get out at his best top end. I think you hold back a little bit of the development when you bounce him around between different positions. NFL is a tough sport to already compete in. Trying to learn multiple positions at once has only got to be making it way harder. No, I think I was right. Let me look on the thing. I was wrong. I don't know on that Jimmy Graham. I got to look on the touchdowns things. Yeah, Jimmy probably has maybe a few more than he does. What'll be interesting for you guys to do is take a look at historically the recent tight ends that have gotten into the Hall of Fame. and then look and see what their stats are versus what these guys are. If they were able to crack that 1,000 catches, 10,000 yard mark, Tony Gonzalez, I'm sure he did. Shannon Sharp, I think he was right near the 10,000 yard mark. So I think that tends to be the place you got to hit. Jeremy Boehm says the Saints are $95 million of the cap, so no Russ. Yeah, I think that's one of the more unlikely teams of the listed teams he put out that I would say, Jeremy, that you could say that's not happening. There's no way that they're doing that. They're going to take $95 million and then they got his base money on top. There's just no way. I don't see there's any way that's working. They're going to have to gut their team. I don't see how that would work in any way, shape, or form. So agree with you there. Cameron says John probably left guard because center needs to know the protection calls better than everyone else and needs to have, yep, we're in agreement, Cameron. I think those centers got a lot on their plate when they got to take over for like that. Mark Habercorn, how you doing, Mark? Watch your vids and you're really good with your voice and style. You should do documentaries as you make good money. I do documentaries too on my channel, Mark. So I do great Seahawk moment videos. But I love doing it, man. I love doing voice work. My father was a morning DJ. So I picked up some tips of the trade from him. Tips of the trade. Cameron, Jeremy, you can always create cap room. You could be 150 with the cap and you clear enough to get Russ. They could. They were going to be taking that team down to the studs. They'd have Russ and they'd have like no one else. They'd have like a New Orleans longshoreman as their right tackle. Robert Duger. All right. Take a look at him. Michael, do any old school Seahawks still have a way into the Hall of Fame? Maybe Chuck Knox. I think Dave Craig had about the best stats of any non-Hall of Fame quarterback when he retired. Unger. It's a good question. It's a really good question. Unfortunately not. No. Chuck Knox was a great coach, but sort of the type of guy that just never was able to get into the Super Bowl. Not even get into the Super Bowl and lose, just could never get in the Super Bowl. You look at him historically going back to his Buffalo days, some good teams, but just never could kind of get in and up over the hump there with that. And Craig, unfortunately, is going to not get in because of the fact there's been so many quarterbacks in the modern era because of the passing attacks that are going to supplant him statistically speaking and push him down further and further and further into that on that list. Unger, probably not. Not quite enough. Hall of Very Good. The Hall of Very Good Unger would be in, but not the Hall of Fame. Sean Alexander might be the one guy who would maybe have a chance coming in by the Veterans Committee type thing, if you want to go old school with that. But even him, I think he carried such a rep as being a soft runner by some, that will be the one thing that just keeps him from getting through. So I know it's a bummer, Michael, but I don't really see it, unfortunately. Cameron uses Father Time's undefeated. Tom Brady says otherwise. How does he do it? I don't know, man. I don't know. I maintain he's a vampire. I maintain that he's living off the blood of angels and babies. Jeremy, give examples you can't because there aren't any. Why dude wide? One thing to remember: Russ's no trade clause does not mean Russ can demand a trade and picks his team. He can only pick a team if Seattle is the one who wants to trade him. Then he has a choice. That's how it would be by the letter of the law, wide dude wide, but I would argue this plays out a little bit differently when the rubber meets the road, live action, when the bullets are really firing. And if you've got Wilson saying, I'm not going to go to a team you try to trade me to, and I'm not waiving the trade clause going to these teams, I want out of here. If you don't move out of here, I'm going to be a malcontent. Maybe I hold out. Maybe I'll be continuing to be a problem in the media. I'll keep throwing you guys under the bus until you force this to happen. There's other ways that they can put the pressure on, and they have put the pressure on to turn that particular heat up. So while you are right in the way it plays out by the letter of the law, these situations rarely go by the letter of the law. It's sort of a little bit of a free-for-all. And especially now as we're seeing this offseason, it used to be the letter of the law that you couldn't trade a player if you're going to carry $20 million of dead money hit. And this has been the offseason. We've seen two of those players moved on for the first time in NFL history. So I think we've got to be less about what the rules are at every turn necessarily. Coach Reed says the Buccaneers have like 8 Hall of Famers on their roster. Brady, Gronk, Levante David, Shady McCoy. Shady McCoy is not going to go to the Hall of Fame. Nope. Antonio Brown, maybe. His professional, some of the reputation stuff will factor in. Hall of Fame voters do hold that against players. Mike Evans is a possibility. Sue, not sure on Sue, man. Not sure on Sue. Shaq Barrett has a chance. I don't think Shaq Barrett has a chance. No. Shaq Barrett's a very good pass rusher in this league. The 20 sack year was an outlier. He's not going to the Hall of Fame. You're stretching on that one, Coach Ritz. You're stretching on a few of those names. A couple of them I'm with you on, but even on Levante David, I'm not 100% sure I'm not as sure on that one. Huey says analytics is very important because of the power given to it. It's the only way guys that don't know shit about the game can use to justify their decisions about a game they don't know anything about. Okay. Go Treats. Brady pushed father time a year forward every year. He'd be like, nah, you're getting me this year. Go away. You can have me next year. This is what Brady says to father time every year. He just gives in the middle. I just picture him father time walking in. And for some reason, I picture it as death with his skith. And Brady, he comes in, he's like, you're coming with me today, Brady. And Brady just gives him a middle finger. And he just guy walks the other way. Nathaniel Parks. So since Brady's probably leaving next offseason, why not go $60 million over the cap next year, going for maybe Russ can ride off into the sunset if he still wants to leave? So you're saying, so what I think you're trying to say, Nathaniel, is to go for broke now. Basically, sell tomorrow out fully for today, and just let's go for it. And I wouldn't be opposed to that. If you went as a front office here and you said, let's put all of our chips into the middle of the stack, and after this year, we could be a complete crap show and things could turn sideways for us, but so be it. We're at least going to try everything out. We're going to try to give Russ the team he wants, give him the offensive line he wants, make one more true big final major swing at it, and then if that doesn't work, do your rebuild. You wouldn't have to talk me very hard into something like that, Nathaniel. I could be talked into that quite easily. Mark, is the biggest tell that he will be traded next year is they don't restructure $10 million into signing bonus money so they can clear off $10 million of this year's cap? Yes, Mark. Yeah, because outside of that, the only other way you've got is you got like 3 or 4 players that you can move on from to clear some of that cap space, and we know they're going to have to clear cap space. So if they go that route and they start dicing and slicing players off the roster to do it, and they don't do the straightforward thing, which would be that, it would be, I think, indicative that they want to then move off of him next year, because you still have a little bit of dead money next year. So it's like $26 million, I think, next year as we stand right now. But if you do go into convert this year into essentially the base into bonus, then it goes up to like 32, 33 million to move off from him. So it's a little bit more at that point to do it, and they may not want to go that. They may want to lessen it down as far as they can go. So, yep, absolutely. Levi says, do I want to fire Pete? Yeah, I would have wanted to fire him. That was the first move I would have made at the start of the year, Levi. I would have made it at the start of the offseason and moved on and brought in the offensive coach that would have been able to build an offense around Pete, build the team first around offense first and foremost, and then let's go from there. So that would have been the first thing. I think Pete's gotten a little long in the tooth. I think the game's passed him by in certain respects. I still think he can be a good coach in this league. I still think he can get certain things done in this league as far as the way he goes about what he does. But I do think that there's some issues here at play with our coach Carroll. Coach Rietz, you have Shady's Eagles career rush touch yard leader. He has 11,000 rush yards and 80 total touchdowns and a 6-time Pro Bowler, I think, and a 2-time Pro Bowl, a 2-time Super Bowl champion, a 2-time first-time All-Pro. He will get in. We'll see, man. We'll see. I think there's a logjam at running back position. I think there's going to be a lot of guys right in that realm where 10, 11,000 yards, there's going to be a bunch of guys, you know. Let me take a look here. And maybe the Super Bowl thing is what pushes him in, but I think there's a lot of guys there that you go, oh, that guy's there and he's got 11,000 yards. Oh, that guy's there. He's got 11,000 yards. So we got Edgerrin James. He's in that realm. I mean, he didn't win a Super Bowl, but he's not going in. Steven Jackson, he's not going in. Corey Dillon, he's not going in. I don't think Warwick Dunn's getting there. Ricky Waters, Jamal Lewis. McCoy's right in a frame where there's a lot of guys where they've got a lot of yards, a lot of stats, but they aren't getting into the Hall of Fame. You might be right though. Maybe the Super Bowls are enough to put him over the top. I didn't know he had 2 Super Bowls. I thought he only had 1. Was he there with the Eagles when they won that one? I thought he had moved on at that point. The GOAT 209, Zach Miller is Hall of Fame in my eyes. No, you're not. He's not going to the Hall of Fame. Why? Has a player ever given back money to facilitate a trade? I've never heard of it. I'd have to look into it. I believe it has happened at some point. Why do why? I got to look into if and where it has occurred. If it has occurred, the one thing I would say is that this is a trade that's never occurred in NFL history either. So you've never had a trade occur in NFL history, or have a quarterback who just signed a deal relatively soon, then forcing that trade. So we could see a little bit of a difference because of that. Cameron Hughes mentions a good point about McCoy with it. He was a 2-time Super Bowl champ, but he didn't play a snap in either of those games. It's valid. Cameron says people love slapping the bust label on a guy as fast as possible. They do. It gets thrown around way too fast and way too quick with guys. Nobody wants to give it any time, and it usually just comes into where people are colored by a player and what they see first and foremost, and they can't change off their opinion with it. But this is one of those cases, I would think, Cameron, where people should just try a little harder. Think just give it a little more chance. The GOAT 209, is Edgerrin James the only Seahawk running back to make the Hall of Fame? And he only played. Did he make the Hall of Fame? I didn't think Edgerrin made the Hall of Fame. Edgerrin James made the Hall of Fame? I didn't. Man, that happened quietly if it did. Dark Knight Jedi. Our Super Bowl team may not have been a bunch of Hall of Famers, but how many should end up in our Ring of Honor? I would put Cam's going to get there. Marshawn's going to get there. Obviously, Russell's going to get there. Sherman's going to get there. The middle finger might make it hard with Earl. It may make it hard at the end of the day with Earl. He's on the line. Bobby Wagner gets there. And then that's it. I don't think anybody else gets in the Ring of Honor aside from that. I don't think KJ gets in either. KJ Wright's had a very similar career to that of Joe Nash. KJ Wright's essentially had much of the same career that Joe Nash had through the 80s and 90s. Go look at Joe Nash. He played 15 years for us. Had a productive career. Had some stats he could put into play. But not very good player, but you're not going to retire his jersey. Cameron Hughes says, I'd take Trubisky with Mack and 3 firsts. Don't know the cap situation with Trubisky, but he could be a competent game manager or competition for the rookie we bring in. I believe his cap hit's getting up pretty high for his base salary, Cameron. So you're not gonna want to spend money on Trubisky at all. If you brought in Trubisky, it'd be like to have him in on a $1 million deal, not to be spending like $6 or $7 million on him. He's just not even worth that. And if it's a matter of we could have gotten another second or third instead of Trubisky, I would have taken the third instead of Trubisky. If we're talking in that situation. So I want no part of Mitchell Trubisky here. No part of that guy here. Mark Huck, Jimmy will get in if Dallas Clark does, statistically. Jimmy's a Hall of Famer. He shouldn't because he can't block. Will be interesting if they let a guy who can't block in when tight end requires blocking. Yeah, especially when that was a big hole to their career. And if it's like, well, if you're going to measure Jimmy then by being a receiver, if that's people's counter to that mark, and then, well, okay, how does he stack up statistically against receivers rather than how does he stack up statistically against other tight ends? Which I think would be where I land on just again thinking I think there's enough with him where it just won't quite get in there. Levi says, Jags get Wilson, we get Trevor Lawrence. I don't think it's happening, my guy. I don't think that's happening, unfortunately. I didn't think so. Maybe. But I don't think so. No. Urban Meyer wants himself Lawrence. The GOAT, Robert Gronkowski, has a similar career to Jimmy Graham, but he got 4 rings, so he's going to make it for sure. Well, there's also one vast difference even beyond the rings there, GOAT, between Gronkowski and Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham was, throughout his time, one of the worst, if not the worst, blocking tight ends throughout his time playing in the league. Rob Gronkowski's been one of the best, if not the best, run and pass blocking. He doesn't do a lot of pass blocking, but a best run blocking, at least, tight end in the league. So tight ends ask for a couple of skill sets beyond just catching the ball. He says, Russ or any other quarterback is more likely to take a discount if they feel the team is 100% into building around them, and the Seahawks haven't shown they're really into that. If they do, then perhaps you consider it. You've got no proof to go off with that, Huey. You're contemplating on something that you're not backing with anything. What proof do you have at any juncture Russ is willing to take a discount anywhere? I have proof that he wants to be paid at the top market at each point. I've got the leaks coming out that he wanted to be paid 20% of the cap that would be a sliding scale year in, year out. I've got the proof that both of the two recent negotiations you've had on long-term contracts have gone to the 11th hour. He pushed him to the very last minute to get every last dollar bill that he could get. I've got proof and that I can show you every 4 years he wants to be re-upped on a new deal. But you have your gut that says if they had done this, then he'd be willing to. It doesn't give me a lot to go off of your gut with that. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you, bro. Cameron, the LOB should have their own area of the effing stadium dedicated to them or something like a statue. The Seahawks will never see a collection of players better than them. I think that'd be cool. Though, what about the one with, what about like a statue with the one where you got Sherman running a pick, right? He's got interception in his hands, and then he's being flanked by Thomas and Chancellor's blockers on the play. Kind of a cool, iconic photo of him. What if we did like a cool like statue like that? That might be kind of cool. And it is a damn shame we only won one, Cameron. It sucks. It sucks. It's just stupid. The GOAT 209, how does Shed get a coaching job before Cam, or does Cam not want to coach? I would say Cam is a multimillionaire, and I think Shed has a couple $100,000 in his bank account. So I think probably it's a matter of Cam's comfy and retiring and chilling. And so he doesn't feel the need to have to go coach necessarily, I would think. You know, maybe. I'm making a guess here, so I don't know on this, but that'd be my guess. Levi, I believe to make a good offensive line, you need to have a good coaching staff for offensive linemen. Right now we have a comparable crew, but we need better. We also need big money guys as well. Yep, my off-season plan, Levi, this offseason starts with going and signing Joe Tooney, the left guard position, going and drafting your left tackle of the future / a guy that could push over at right tackle, and then as well, going out there and drafting one of the better centers in this draft. Those would be three of the places I would look to attack in this particular offseason to do just what you said. Build up that offensive lineman. UAZ2K says Eichenberg will not be available at 56. Probably not. You're right there. Iowa's Alaric Jackson is the best later round left tackle prospect and can play right tackle when Shell gets hurt. Also love left guard Banks and Robert Hainsey from Notre Dame. I've got to watch a little more tape on I got to watch a little more tape on Aaron Banks, Huey. I'm not sure on him. I know he's got a lot of hype with him, but I'm just not sure with him. Alaric Jackson, I mean, look, those Iowa guys got the high floor. You know, they're going to come in and they're going to be pro ready because of their technique. And that's what you see with Alaric, is that technically wise, he can handle both left and right. I don't think he's athletic enough to stay up at left, but look, he pushed Tristan Wirfs to right tackle for a year there when Wirfs was there last year because they thought highly enough of him to hold up at left tackle. Just sometimes doesn't always look great to me over at left tackle. But again, technically sound, and you're right. You'd be able to handle the duties for right tackle over there at Shell, and maybe potentially he could round out into a left tackle. But I do worry about his athleticism long term to sustain over there on the left side. Mark says, your Seahawks videos were the ones I was talking about. You pull the viewer into the video. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it, Mark. Oh, and I say, let Shaq and Carson go. Yeah, and I'm working on a large video right now, Mark. I try to do some more of them. The tough part is that the growth on this channel really comes from the live stream shows. I don't know if I get like 99% likes ratios on my Great Seahawk Moment videos, but they don't get viewed a lot. I think YouTube pushes them down on the algorithm, unfortunately. But I love doing them, and I'll always keep doing something. I'll always have at least one of those on the burner, cooking to some degree to get one out. But I think that you'll like the Largent one. I found a lot of footage on Largent. I'm going real deep on him. Just a fun player to watch. And yeah, I think Shaq and Carson are going to go. I don't think we have the money to spend on those guys, and I think Shaq's going to get paid. Somebody's going to get bamboozled into giving that guy, I think, $10 million a year. Coach Reed says Gronk has much better stats than Jimmy Graham. What are you on? Yeah, we're in agreement there, Coach Reed. I don't think Jimmy's on Gronk's. He's not in the same field. Gronk's probably one of the best, if not the best, all-time tight end. Jimmy is nowhere near that. Randall, if it doesn't happen by the draft, we should assume he's playing for us in 2021. Yeah, I just don't think if it's going to get to that point, you've gone through free agency in the draft, you're trading him afterwards because that cap hit, because you're waiting for the post-June 1st designated time period for the league to flip over, and then the cap hit goes down a little bit. You're very hard to do it that way, because then you're building the roster up with the anticipation of a trade that's not yet been consummated. That's what happens if the trade suddenly doesn't get consummated and you've been building the roster up for an eventuality that doesn't occur. The Go209 says, is Devin Hester a Hall of Famer? If not in there already, yeah. He's a Hall of Famer. Best returner of all time. And by a wide margin, I think that's probably going to get him in. It's a weird player with that one, though, right? Like, it's not your normal Hall of Famer. Oh, Go-Triots. Yeah, I don't think Shady's going on. I don't think. He doesn't get credit for the Super Bowl wins because he wasn't really a part. He's a Super Bowl champion, but I'm not going to use that on his resume of like a reason to put him in the Hall of Fame because he wasn't an impact player on those teams. He didn't have any real major kind of role. Cameron says Super Bowl champion is a Super Bowl overrated stat, especially for position other than quarterback. Football is a team game. Agreed. Randall McDaniel, Franco Harris made the Hall of Fame. He did, Randall. The thing with it on this that this is why I point to the mid-2000s as the logjam. Franco got in before there was the logjam there at the position of running backs. So he got to stand a little bit of a head and shoulders above any of his other peers around him, whereas these other running backs have a lot more of their peers that are kind of around them as markers and comparisons. Oh, that's right. That's right. Franco Harris did play for the Seahawks for a season. That's right. The gray beard. Why? So many things would have to happen to trade Russ that it makes it highly unlikely. Highest dead cap ever of any, or the player giving back money. First time Super Bowl winning top tier quarterback in prime, traded, et cetera, et cetera. Agreed? Not likely to happen. Why? But the caveat with this is, of course, we don't know what Russell Wilson's thinking right now in the respect of he's giving indications that he's kind of fed up and had enough. Maybe he's just getting change and he's pushing for change and he's just trying to accomplish change. Maybe. Maybe he really is trying to get his way out of town without being a complete villain on his way out, and this is the way that he's trying to do it. Could also be that, and there's a lot of indications it could be that. But I land where you land at the end of the day. I've said I think it's unlikely he's traded this offseason, but I do think it's likely at this point we're looking at him moving on after next year. Always compete. How you doing? Always compete. This is a great show. Thank you very much, my man. I appreciate you. Glad I stumbled in. I think Pete and Russ need to kiss and make up. They're both still in denial that we weren't in the Super Bowl. I think everyone was looking past the Rams and we got beat. Yeah, I agree, man. That's where I've landed on throughout this show is to say, guys, make this work. Your best future between the both of you is you guys together here. You've built your legacies together. Keep the legacy together. Keep the potential there. You've got a good football team. You need to make some changes. We got to make some adjustments here, but the best future for both of these two guys is together, I believe. In Utero says KJ is the most underrated Seahawks player of all time. I don't know. I mentioned Joe Nash. I think Joe Nash doesn't get a lot of credit in utero. Look at the career Joe Nash had, man. He's played more years than KJ. You could argue maybe he had more production than KJ. But because he played in the 80s and doesn't get remembered about, it's like kind of gets lost. Mark Habercorn, we need to find a Lynch-type running back. Keep Dunlap, drop Jaron Reed, as he's not that good on the defensive line. Russ needs to take a pay cut, and then find a way to keep KJ. I want to see more of that tall tight end we have. Colby Parkinson, I believe, is who you're speaking to. Yep, I think we got to find a Marshawn Lynch running back one way or another. It could be in the draft, Javonte Williams, could be in free agency, Leonard Fournette type. I do hope they keep Dunlap, man. Mark, it would hurt to give up on one of the best defensive guys you have on that line right now. To let that guy go because you don't want the cap hit would be tough. I'm not as much requiring Jaron Reed to move on. I'm okay with Jaron Reed. I think he's a pretty good player overall. It's not a superstar, not a Pro Bowler. It's one more year with him on the contract. If you move off from him, I think it does create a hole where you need to now go find a 3-tech out there. And who's that 3-tech going to be? Is it going to be cheaper? Is it going to be better? I don't know if I want to downgrade that position just in the name of moving off of his salary. But I like pretty much everything you got to say in there. And we would love to see what we got with Parkinson, man. Insidious, how you doing? Hello, Insidious. Coach Reed says it's a damn shame why Vikings and Bills only have 0 Super Bowls. Yes, it is. It's tough on those franchises, man. A proud franchise, proud fan bases. They just have never been able to put it together. Bills are on the upswing, though, man. They've got a good young team. The Go209 says, how can Dwayne Brown and Mike Iupati make the Hall of Fame? They can't. Neither's going to make the Hall of Fame, unfortunately. They call it the Hall of Very Good. Dark Knight Jedi. If we ended up with a quarterback like Derek Carr, what would we need to add to win another Super Bowl? Not to say we'll end up with Carr, but wondering what success can look like past the post-Russ era. Well, I've always landed on this dark night by saying that with Snyder and Carroll, if they're going to move on from Russ, it's hard not to see them wanting to wrap their mind around doing what they did before, which is having a rookie, a young quarterback, a first-round quarterback, a quarterback who's cheap on their rookie deal is essentially the important part of this. Moving on from Russ and then bringing on Carr is going to make the cap that much more tougher next year. Then you got to decide if you're sold on Carr. It takes that much less draft assets you could have gotten back from Oakland. I don't know that it makes a lot of sense. If you're going to force me to wear the hat and say we took on Carr and it happened in a trade, okay, we did it. If you're looking at how you build up around that team, okay, so I'm anticipating you're getting 3 first-round picks, and then since it's not Mack and it's Carr, then you're getting an additional second-round pick or whatnot. If you've got the 10th overall pick and now you've got Carr at that point, you could do a variety of different things. You know, you could look at wide receiver. There'll be some good talent there. Penny Sewell, where to fall, as some people are now prescribing. He could be interesting. Rashaad Slater there. You could build up the offensive line around Carr then and really get them in shape. Slater could come in and slide in at left guard and eventually be your left tackle of the future once Dwayne Brown moved on. That would probably be the way out the gate. You wouldn't have a lot of money to spend this offseason, so now we're talking about spending money in the next offseason, and the free agents would be available there, which makes it harder to predict because we're not talking about this being a maximization of this season, but it being next season you really look towards. A lot more of the reason why I just don't think Carr's a part of the deal, Dark Knight Jedi, to bring here with Russell I don't see how that makes a lot of sense with it. But I would think that they would do what they did beforehand. You had, as somebody mentioned before, you had one of the highest paid offensive lines and highest paid defensive lines in the NFL in 2012, 13, 14. So you would go back to that, building in the trenches, go back to investing in the trenches. I would expect them to try to duplicate what they did before, not necessarily trying to recreate the Legion of Boom, but to create a very deep team with a lot of talent, with a lot of depth. You can kind of round through there. In Utero says, I know for a fact Cam doesn't want to coach. I could understand why. Coaching isn't for everybody. No Hall of Fame for KJ, Ring of Honor, but not Hall of Fame. How does Graham compare to Tony Gonzalez? Tony's got about 4,000 more yards, I think, receiving. Check. Stats. Let's see here with him. So with Tony Gonzalez, you're looking at NFL site is slow. Their site is broken. Oh, he had 15,000 yards receiving. So Jimmy Graham right now, as it sits, has 7,000 less yards receiving than Tony Gonzalez. That's quite substantial. GoTreat says, Mike Iapati is the greatest Samoan player of all time, as that's probably his greatest achievement, because even with that, he won't get into the Hall of Fame. No, he'll probably make the Samoan Hall of Fame. I don't know, though. Was Lofa not better, GoTreats, or is Lofa Tongan and not Samoan? Michael, which tier 1 quarterback slides this year in the draft? It seems every year we have someone slide. Maybe Mac Jones. If he slides, do we move up for him? He'd be definitely the game manager type. Sure wouldn't make me excited at all, Michael. He doesn't interest me in any respect, Mac Jones. I'm not on the Jones train. I think Trey Lance could slide in this draft because he didn't play last year. He opted out. He's got a lot of great film from 2019, but you got nothing off 20. So he would be the guy that probably falls as much as anybody else. I think Mac Jones is pretty well slotted into being picked at the back end of the first round by somebody. There's always a back end first round quarterback that gets picked at the back of the first round who some team will jump back in from the second round to pick them where they're trying to get that value. You saw this, we had this happen even last year. Who was our guy last year? Jordan Love. This has happened with Jordan Love last year. So very much a similar case with that on Mac. He's pretty much locked in at that. With Lance, or Trey Lance, I mean, he could go anywhere from like number 7, 8 overall all the way into the 20s in the first round. And he would be a guy, if you've moved on from Russ, that I could see them moving up into the first round to get back into the first round depending on, or pick with their first round pick if they trade off Russ. But I don't see anybody falling into that second round, Michael. Kellen Mond would be the one guy that might interest them in the second round at that point if he falls to that realm. But boy, that's another one where it's like they got bigger holes, bigger fish to fry. Randall, if we don't use an answer by the time free agent starts, will it make us alter how we attack? Less likely to sign certain positions without knowing. I think we have an answer by the free agent start period. They'll know what they're wanting to do on this one way or another, Randall. I mean, if they want to facilitate, say, the trade, and they know they can get compensation, they'll know quickly if they can or they can. It's not going to make it take a long period of time to figure out what's what at that point. They're either going to make their decision, though, one way or another. Like, it's not going to be dependent upon if we can find these guys out there, if we're going to, fail in free agency like we've done before. I think they'll decide Russ is here or he isn't here by the time free agent starts. Oh, you didn't miss anything, Jace. You didn't miss nothing. In utero, the Largent hit on Atwater is one of the best Seahawks moments. The backstory in that play is what also makes it amazing. Yep, I am definitely integrating it into my video. It isn't Atwater, actually. It was Mike Harden, who was the guy that Largent decleated for his little dirty hit upside Largent's head back in Denver. He says, I personally don't think Russ will take a discount. I'm just saying the Seahawks have done nothing to engender that type of financial sacrifice from Russ. Do you? I don't know is the answer, Huey. I'm not behind the doors. I'm not in the conversations. I don't know what's being talked about. I will oftentimes make a guess when I have a pretty good idea of something and I have a bit of knowledge. When I'm operating more and more from the dark of things in certain aspects, I try to stay out of that lane because at the end of the day, it's a guess and you're not operating with any kind of knowledge with it. That's why I was pointing out in your comment, you said, that if Seattle had done all these right moves, Russ would take a discount. But you don't have any proof of that. You feel like that's maybe the truth. And when we get into feeling something's the truth, it feels like it's this way. You're in a lot more of unstable ground beneath you as far as drawing certainties from that. To me, it's a lot harder to do that. There's been a lot of things I think this front office coaching staff have done for Russ as well. Again, you don't put the most draft capital into your offensive line if you're not caring about your quarterback. You don't always make sure that he has playmakers on this outside to throw to, which look, throughout Russ's career, whether the moves have always worked out or not, they've done more to invest in, let's say, the skill positions than the Packers have done for Rodgers. You place the Packers up on a pedestal, in saying that this is a team that's done right by Rodgers. This is a team that is trying to do right, but have they done right by him with the skill positions? Jordy Nelson got old, moved on, didn't do a lot else. And Devontae Adams is all you had over there. They've not added a lot. Last year they went and got Jordan Love when it's like, well, if you're doing right by Rodgers there, why don't you get one of the great receivers that was in that draft last season? Seattle, throughout their time, has spent second-round picks on Tyler Lockett and Richardson and first-round picks on Percy Harvin and first-round picks for Jimmy Graham. I mean, the Jimmy Graham thing was to help Russell out. It wasn't to hurt him. I know in respect, maybe we would have rather had Max Unger here. Maybe that would have been better, maybe not. But it was to also help Russell and help him show out. There's been a lot of moves that they've done in Russell Wilson's favor. They've also been willing to make him the highest paid quarterback when he's up for quarterback both times. Been willing to re-up him both times on 4-year deals. Was that not doing right by him then? Was that not engendering themselves to him then? Again, this is where we get in, I think, into the conversation of we don't know, man. You and I have no idea. We're making guesses. And they're not necessarily educated guesses. Voodoo Magic. Are there any regrets of Seattle not re-signing or trading away players that had stellar careers post-Seahawks? I can't think of many. Moai, Clark come to mind. The Clark deal has actually been proven in retrospect to be a phenomenal trade by John Schneider. And many fans who raked him over the coals when that trade initially happened should be coming back now and eating some crow. You got first and second round draft compensation for Clark, which when we see other players go, be it D Ford or any other pass rusher that's gone on the market, has not gotten anywhere near the same kind of draft capital. Outside of maybe Khalil Mack is the only other guy that you can really point to. When you look at Pro Football Focus ratings and how they grade Frank Clark, he's 72 out of 79 as far as edge rushers in the last couple of years as a player. Sack numbers have not been there for Chiefs, if that's the metric you want to use. Not a good run stuffer for the Chiefs. Never really was a good run stuffer for us. Part of the hesitancy in us wanting to pay him $23.5 million per year. And you're going to see him soon cut by the Chiefs. So I don't know that I would put that particular guy as a miss for the front office. Mawai, yep. Mawai would definitely be on that list, Voodoo Magic. I think Pete Kendall got cut at a time when it was less to do with how he was as a player and more to do with the fact that he was a little bit, he's kind of got a little bit mouthy there with the coaching staff. Who else? Not too many in our history, especially with Snyder and Carroll. When they tend to move on from a guy, they've gotten the most out of him. They tend to be less of a player when they move on. They don't tend to show out more. Man, I don't have a lot. I don't have a lot of guys. I'll think about it, Voodoo Magic. If I can think about somebody else, I'm sure the chat will give me some good ideas. But most of the guys you moved on from, you felt pretty good about moving on, and it worked out okay. Worked out okay. Maybe like a Eugene Robinson, still went on a pretty good career for Atlanta Falcons when he left. That might be a guy to take a look at. Sam Adams did pretty good for the Ravens when he moved on. That one hurt a little bit. Michael says, Pete may feel Russ is disloyal and ungrateful. Pete and John Schneider really are the reason Russ is rich and famous. They made Russ. Or else the Eagles were taking him. Russ got lucky. Any other team, he would have been a backup quarterback. Very well could have gone that way, and they very well could feel that way. I don't know, Michael. I don't know Pete's heart. He's been very quiet about this situation, so I don't know where he really stands. I do know that his first rule is protect the team. Some of these comments have not exactly fallen under that umbrella. So I would have to think that he would be a little dissatisfied with that way that's gone this offseason, and these aren't necessarily comments that Russ has given that has been in favor of protecting the team. But we will find out soon enough where he stands on this and what he thinks. We will. Always compete. We should draft a potential replacement for Russ. Anyone that could be available in later rounds if we can't get Lance in the first. Mills, Mond, Newman. I've got to look at Newman and Mills are the next two guys on my list to always compete for me to scout and take a look at. I watched a little bit of Mond last night. Rough around the edges, strong arm, good accuracy, throws with anticipation, not a lot of mobility. There's some rawness to his game, but that's why you probably get him in the second round. Mills is supposed to be the big freaky guy. He's the guy that you're doing a lot of he's showing you these hints of what he could be, but you've really got to project him out. But he might have as much potential as any quarterback in this draft outside of Lawrence as far as his full skill set if he can tap into all of it. I do need to look at a little bit more of his film. Yeah, you could look at him as a guy or Mon as a guy. I'll need to look on Newman as a guy, but you could look that direction, always compete. I think that with the limited draft capital, the holes that they have to fill on this team, and the fact that it's probably a year from now you're looking at moving on from Russell, that they don't look at necessarily dealing with that backup quarterback this year. They don't allocate a third round or a fourth round pick this year to the draft and a quarterback, needing it in other places. So I don't think the guys are going to be good enough to facilitate them taking a higher pick in their draft with so few picks, with so many holes in so many other areas. They go 209. Steve Hutchinson left us. Yep. I would have matched the deal on the Hutchinson thing. I know the poison pill put it in there to where you guaranteed him, but I would have just guaranteed it then. I would have called their bluff, or not their bluff, but I would have just been like, the hell you guys. I'm not losing a Hall of Fame guard in the middle of his head into his prime. No. Fine. I'll guarantee it. And if he gets a career-ending injury, then whatevs. Whatever. Mark Lewinsky is a good one. That was a bad one to go. Pass blocker first, not a run blocker first, and that had Seattle kind of out on him. Okay, so we've gotten up. We got up onto the chat here. Let me know. Is there anybody in the chat right now? Do you guys want to do any call-in line on the Discord channel? I'm thinking I can maybe do that. I'm going to go use the bathroom. I'll be back. If there's somebody that wants to do maybe a little bit of talking over there on the Discord and do some yapping with me and got a little back and forth, I'm down for doing a little bit of that. But bear with me. I'm going to go use the bathroom real quick. Be right back. Okay. Let me bring up my Twitter here. All right. Just checking real quick here, folks, see if we got anybody. All right. Well, I don't see anybody in the chat poking through. So it looks like we kind of got everything through. Randall, anybody you want to talk or do any talking, feel free. I'm going to try to fix up the Discord here and get you guys easier to get in. I don't know what's going on. I got to add some roles or whatever. So I'll get it fixed up. It's a work in progress. I'm sorry about that. I'm new to it. And again, just limited time with this stuff. So it's a lot of things I'm trying to bounce through with doing the scout and doing the video creations, getting live, all that stuff. It's a full plate. But other than that, looks like we got up all on the chat. Another great little chat we had here today. A lot of fun talking with you guys, as always. Make sure I got other stuff here. We got free agency is slowly here kind of approaching, so hopefully we're going to get knocked up on that soon. We can kind of get a little bit deeper. I'm diving a little bit further into the prospects. We are going to do a 3-day live stream event of the draft, so you're going to have me here on all 3 of those days, even though we don't pick in the first round. I'm going to do all 3 because I just have so much fun. It's also just fun, kind of looking at what players are going to what teams and how that's all going to work out as well. Other than that, I do appreciate you guys watching on in. We will get in the Discord channel. Sorry about the bumpiness on that, but we will get that thing back up and running here soon to where we can get you guys in. Maybe we'll do on the next show, maybe just right out the gate, we'll just start out and we'll just start out right in the Discord and get you guys in and bounce through a few different calls if we can, making that work. Paul Manning says, do you feel that the coaching staff feel apart at second? Do you feel that the coaching feel part at second part of the year? Oh, fell apart. Sorry, Paul. So he says, do you feel that the coaching staff fell apart at the second part of the year? Yeah, a little bit. Paul, a little bit. This is to a degree. It's hard to answer this, succinctly because there's a lot of blame to go around. It's Carroll coming in and putting his finger in the offensive pie when he should have backed off and stayed away. It's Schottenheimer and his lack of adjustments that was spoken to about both by coaches and by players. This is a guy that carried this rep when he came in here. He's a good plan A guy, but he doesn't have a lot of plan Bs or plan Cs. He's going to give you an initial plan, and if you solve it, you're just kind of screwed. So he got to eat some of that blame as well. Certainly some of the pass protection went a little bit poor over the back end of the season. But I do think that there's a disconnect here in the coaching to the players, and specifically Coach Carroll as he looks at the offense. And it's like the offense almost seems like to me at times with Coach Carroll is this necessary evil that has to be a part of the football team, but that he's almost more excited by defense and special teams. But I don't know. I think you're probably onto something a little bit there, Paul, for sure. So again, we will try to maybe lead out a little bit on the next show with a little bit of the Discord calls because I know we missed them on this one. We'll try to maybe start out on the next one, just kick them right out from the gate. I know a lot of you guys have some thoughts on the current situation here, and I am interested in hearing what you guys do have to say with that. But other than that, I think we have knocked everything out. I appreciate you guys for watching. You guys are super kind in the comments. You always keep the chat lively. I appreciate it. Please do not forget. Don't you ever forget. I do see some out there starting to forget. I know the memory goes as you get older, but just keep it at the front of your mind, okay? Keep it at the front of your mind.